Welcome to Pick Me Up, I'm Scared, the podcast.
I'm your host, Madeline.
And I'm your host, David.
And today, we're going to be talking about Peta.
I don't like him.
I entered this thinking I had misunderstood Peta, and then I came out of it and I was like, I did misunderstand them, but what I learned, I liked less.
I will say, they are enjoyable sometimes in the way good trolls are enjoyable. Mm-hmm. Right? Sometimes reading about them is really annoying and depressing and makes you feel angry.
Yeah.
A lot of the times it's like, that one's kind of funny.
Yeah, sometimes there's some funny things. Well, before we get into it, we'll start with some bookkeeping. Holiday schedule. We will be off for the next 2 weeks.
Is that right?
I think so, yeah. I'm going to be going with Chris to see his family. Mm-hmm. We are in the final stretch of our book pre-order. So for anybody who hasn't pre-ordered my book yet, I Survived Capitalism and All I Got Was This Lousy t-shirt, I would say if you wanted to and you had the money to do so, that would be cool. Because if we get enough pre-orders, we can debut the first week as a bestseller. And that is really special and nice for everybody involved.
Oh, did you see someone, I believe his name was Fox, one of our listeners on Patreon, sent along the link, which is on our Patreon, to the union thing, where buying on Powell's through this affiliate link, it contributes a little money to the union strike fund.
That is pretty cool. That is great. So that is on our Patreon. For anybody who hasn't purchased yet, if you live in Chicago, Dallas, Austin, LA, Portland, or Seattle, or nearby, you can buy the book, and it also gets you a ticket into the book tour. So I'll be doing a book tour next month, and if you already have the book, you can still go to the book tour dates. 2 locations, I believe, are charging $5 entry, but all of the others, it will be free. But the schedule is as follows. Chicago, that is January 19th, and that'll be at Everybody's Coffee, presented by The Bookseller. Dallas, January 20th at Interbang Books. Austin, January 21st at Book People. LA, January 22nd at Barnes & Noble at the Grove. And Barnes & Noble has been really excited about my book, so I'm very, very happy, and that is why I'm going to the Grove for them.
That is commitment.
I know. The Grove is very, very far west to me. Portland, January 24th at Powell's, and Seattle, January 25th at Elliott Bay Book Company. And some people have asked about masking regulations at the events. We have no control over that, so please check with the local store what their masking policy is. And just check with the local store about how to secure a ticket for the event as well. Speaking of Patreon, where the Powell's link to purchase with a way that supports the unionizing efforts. In addition to that, we've got some bonus content over on our Patreon today that if you are a Patreon subscriber, you might want to listen to before you get into this episode, because we're going to be talking about Peta, and the supplementary content for today's episode is on our Patreon, and it is all about the foundational ideology that Peta came from, which is Peter Singer, his book Animal Liberation, and the idea of speciesism. So if you're a Patreon subscriber, jump over there, and if you're not, it's only $3 a month. So if you got $3 extra a month, you might enjoy it. And for everybody else, I think, David, do you have anything to add before we get into it?
No.
No? Okay. I like it. Decisive, clear. We are going to dive into the wild vegan world of Peta.
I am going to be listening to Earth Crisis all the way home, and they'll hate that for me.
I'm allowed.
I don't think... they don't put a lock on the Spotify. No,
they really should. You should have to prove your vegan street cred to be able to listen to Earth Crisis. Yeah. So we talked about this over on our Patreon already, but David is a pescatarian.
Mostly. I'm
you
just...
dabble.
It doesn't make sense for me to eat a lot of meat. That's kind
of... You mean, aesthetically?
No, it just, it doesn't, practically speaking, I'm most of the things that I would make for myself don't have meat.
Okay, so it's just incidental.
And and then I have slowly been just eliminating the cute animals.
Right.
We did talk about this on Patreon. This is my sort of criteria.
Yes, the cute animals you are less inclined to eat.
Yeah.
Too cute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never thought a fish was cute.
I have thought a fish is cute, but also I don't eat fish, and you do, so there you go. Maybe there is something to the cute argument.
Yeah.
Yes, I am vegan. I've been vegan for 13 years. I was a vegetarian before that. I think I was a vegetarian from the ages of 12 to 15. So that's why I think I was a vegetarian when we met in high school. But then I ate meat again from the years of like 16 to 21.
See, I think 16 would have been around the time that you were force-feeding me Wiener Schnitzel.
Yeah, I think, we talked about this, but I think aesthetically, I really appreciate Wiener Schnitzel. Like the other day, Chris and I went to this place in Burbank called Chili John's because they had a vegan chili. Mm-hmm. And this place has been around since the year 1900. Oh. And it's very like old school Americana, kind of like a divey chili bar. Mm-hmm. And I really loved it. And I just really enjoyed being in there. It just felt right. It was good. And that to me is like Wiener Schnitzel's just one small step down from that.
You do seem to like the sports bar, the bar food, like this aesthetic as your...
Yeah, I would say this is more like a diner counter at Chili John's. Uh-huh. I do recommend Chili John's.
But the American like fast casual, maybe a step up from that.
Yes.
That's your...
I do, I love that. I'm painfully American sometimes, yes. But yeah, so... I became vegan at 20... I didn't actually become vegan at 21. I started...
You dabbled.
I started the journey to become vegan at 21 because I got a dog. I got Mo-Dog, my beloved late dachshund, who I miss dearly every single day, but I got her when I was 20. And she was a puppy, and I had her, and I remember playing with her, and I've told this story before a million times, but I had this rope toy, and I threw the rope toy in my apartment, and she was chasing it, and we were playing fetch, and the rope toy at one point went underneath a door that was open. So it slid under the door so that a knot was on each side of the open door. And Mo-Dog could only see it from one side. She could see one end of the knot, right, and it was stuck. She was trying to pull it out, and it wasn't coming because there was another knot on the other end. And I saw her stop and look at it and be like, oh, something's blocking it, like conceptualize this, walk around the door, stare at it, and then use her paws perpendicular to the door to pull the toy out. And I watched her do this, and again, she's like a baby. She's a puppy. And I'm like, this is so smart. And then I remembered that pigs are smarter than dogs. I just like had this memory that I had like learned that pigs were smarter than dogs. Yeah. And in this moment, I was like, I can never eat a pig again. And I don't know why. That was just like the thing. So I was like, okay, well, I'm not just going to do a pig. I'll just do no red meat. I'm not going to do pork or beef ever again. And from that moment on, it was never appealing to me to eat pork or beef ever again. And maybe a year later, 2 years later, I stopped eating chicken and turkey. And then a year after that, I stopped eating fish and dairy and eggs. And then I was just vegan. And so now I've been vegan for 13 years. But yeah, that was like around 24 is when I was fully vegan. And now I'm 37. And it's interesting because I felt like ideologically, I was not the most vegan person in the room. I felt like I was like, oh, I'll just do this.
You had imposter syndrome about your...
vegan imposter syndrome, yes.
Spirit, were you dreaming about, like, chicken sandwiches? You have said that there are a couple things that you miss. I feel like cheese is one, or...
Not anymore. No, sushi. I don't miss anything anymore. Maybe sushi, but I don't... I literally, at this point, I'm like, something would have to change so significantly in my life for me to eat meat again. Like the only meat I could ever imagine myself eating would be fish, and it would have to be like for reasons uncontrollable to me. I ended up in a place where just being vegan was impossible, and then I would eat fish, I think. But I don't foresee that ever happening. I can't imagine a world where I won't be vegan at some point in my life. And now though, I've been vegan so long that out of all the vegan people I've met, I'm like the last one standing.
Oh, everyone's... I feel like a couple people we know I've heard recently have dropped...
Have dropped it. They're not vegan anymore. Everybody either started eating meat or at the very least started eating like cheese or eggs or something. And I would not think I was the last one standing. I never thought about myself as being especially hardline about being vegan. And like I wear used leather, for example. And I always thought I was like, oh, I'm a bad vegan. I got the used leather. But yeah, all these years later, I'm the one who's still doing it, and other people aren't. And for years, I wouldn't tell people online that I was vegan. I would never say it. I just like wouldn't mention it because I didn't want to deal with the vegan police.
Yeah, I feel like if you ever watch an interview with Ian MacKay or whatever, and someone brings up either his diet or his drug and alcohol consumption, like, he, like, will redirect and then get kind of annoyed.
Yeah.
And that seems kind of like your vibe.
Well, that's what it was for a long time, because I was like, I just don't want to deal with the vegan place because I feel like I'm not pure. And then the longer I've been vegan, the more I've realized that nobody is pure, because being vegan is actually just like a spectrum of decisions you make, and you just make a decision to try to minimize animal suffering at every opportunity. Like, once I realized that, I felt a little more comfortable with it. Like the Vegan Society, you know what they are?
No.
Yeah, they've been around since like the 40s maybe, and they say that being vegan is a philosophy and way of life which seeks to exclude, as far as is possible and practicable, all forms of exploitation of and cruelty to animals for food, clothing, and any other purpose. So built into that seems to be this realization that, like, decisions on how to minimize animal suffering, I might come to different ones than somebody else would come to. And it's also impossible to avoid animal suffering in our current world, like, altogether. Like, if you travel in a vehicle with tires aren't vegan. So, you know, you just, you do your best. And that, I think, is why I've recently become more comfortable saying I'm vegan publicly, even if it comes along sometimes with online battles with the vegan police, right? Mm-hmm. But, you know, whatever. I think that it's interesting. The veganism thing is interesting because the loudest vegan police that I've ever known personally, the people who are the most judgmental, those are the people that I have watched become meat eaters. Mm-hmm. Which is wild.
Do they become, like, proselytizing, like, red meat guys?
They become, like, keto people.
Yeah.
A lot of times. Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. And it makes sense because they weren't in it because they actually cared. They were in it as a way to feel superior to other people. So they just found a different, more convenient way to feel superior to other people?
Yeah, that's reading, actually, when we were doing the Peter Singer stuff and now reading all the PETA stuff, I was like, this is, like, a really good way for someone to be smug.
Yes.
Constantly. Just, like, right, I know they do, like, good work sometimes legally.
Yes.
Right, like, that's a cool thing about PETA.
Yeah.
But I don't think most of PETA got... Like, there are 6.5 million people there. That was the number that I saw for PETA. That might be a few years
Or,
old.
like, affiliated with...
Yeah.
It's a wide spectrum.
But I don't think most of those are lawyers doing legal stuff. I think most of those people are just, like...
And not all of them are even vegan. Like, we talked about Peter Singer, who had the founding ideology for vegan. For PETA. He's not even vegan.
He'll eat, like, mussels.
Yeah, he eats oysters and stuff like that. He's vegan. But yeah, what I found is that the people who tend to be the loudest about it are the people who are new to this, not true to this.
I mean, I think but that's also just, like, any sort of, like, ethical thing that you're going to do, right? Like, the first, like, when you're new to it, there's a year where you're like, this is my whole identity. And it's because, like, right, it's because you're, like, you're not used to it. Like, right, you still, like, I can remember in the past a long time ago.
Yeah.
Like, there were times where you would be like, oh, I do miss this kind of food. I can remember you saying this.
I definitely, in the beginning, I did. I missed pulled pork sandwiches, I remember.
Yeah.
I missed sushi a lot.
And so if you have to remind yourself all the time, you're the vegan police for everyone else because you're the vegan police for yourself.
Oh, wow. That makes sense. Yeah. I mean, I do think for me being vegan has been interesting because I do often find myself at odds with other vegans. Not a lot of them, but, you know, some of them. Like, I've been called a pick-me vegan for saying that I think a human's life matters more than a turkey's, even though I don't personally want to kill or eat a turkey.
My grandparents used to live out in the country. There were turkeys all over there. This goes along with my cuteness thing, and also kind of your dumbness thing.
Yeah.
Turkeys are mean.
Yeah.
Like, they are weird looking. Not cute.
No, this is for you. Not cute. You're
not
eating that turkey. It's not cute. Yeah.
I don't even like turkey. Turkey is not a good...
meat to you?
Yeah, I'm like, this is...
I'm like, saying the word meat, I'm like, I just, like, imagined a turkey and I'm, like, repulsed by it.
But, like, right, and turkeys are mean as shit, man.
Well, okay, this is it's funny because someone followed up with me on that one on the internet and posted a picture of a turkey and its babies, and they were like, would you rather save a pedophile murderer human or this turkey with its babies? And I was like,
what?
My guy, I don't know how to explain to you that sometimes turkeys kill each other too. Like, what is this, like, weird trolley problem we're doing? Like, what is this? Like, this is so wild to me.
I love that, right, like, we talked about this with the Peter Singer, where it's like, you guys this is not a math problem, you dummies.
I know. They're really making it a math problem. Speaking of Peter Singer, I've been called a speciesist for saying that I think there actually is a hierarchy to animal life that's very common sense, and most of us know it intrinsically without thinking, because we would all probably rather save a dog than a spider if given the fictional trolley problem.
Yeah, I would love to see that illustrated for me.
Just like big spider on the train tracks and like adorable puppy, and you're like, oh no, which one? Big spider or puppy?
Presumably at some point it's going to be like a puppy doing the trolley problem.
Oh, yeah.
I would also like to see that, where I'm on the tracks.
And the puppy has to choose between you and a spider.
I want to see all the variations.
Okay, the spider choosing between you and the puppy?
Oh, I mean, I feel like the spider would...
I don't know. Okay, so, I've also been called plant-based, not vegan, for saying, literally this was wild, because one time I said I saw a dead rat on the subway and it made me very sad, but it did not make me anywhere as near as sad as if I had seen a dead person on the subway, and someone was like, well, that's because you're plant-based, not vegan, and it was like, I am vegan.
Who are these people who have the time the energy to be out there, like... Right, whereas, first of all, you have, like, a presence on the internet, something
I
that
do.
I
It's
will...
wild, yeah.
I mean, so you get to...
I can't wait to get out of that. I'm hoping to get out of that after the book is all done.
This is...
Just podcast is all I want. I want everything gone but podcast.
You're going to Greta Garbo it, just put on the big sunglasses and retire.
That's what I want to do. I've been called a fake vegan for saying that I think people's relationships with food is personal and cultural, and I don't feel qualified to tell other people how they should or should not eat. That makes me a fake vegan, apparently. Because a real vegan, they say, would always be proselytizing about veganism.
I mean, the thing is, right, there are moments in my life, and this is why I'm like, oh, it doesn't make sense for me to have, like, any sort of, like, ideological hard line on anything. Mm-hmm. There are moments in my life where I have gone over to someone's house, and they're like, Grandma has made something, and I know how much the grandma worked on it, and it's just been like, I can't not.
Yeah, you're just gonna do it.
Like, this is the most important thing for me right now, is, like, being respectful to this person's hard work.
Yes.
Yeah,
I don't know. I think, so, we're going to talk about PETA, obviously. It is a conversation about veganism and animal rights, and I just think it's interesting because a lot of people do not like my approach to animal rights. It is very alienating to the other vegans, and some vegans get it, right? But some don't, and I think there is a contingency of vegans out there who think that the only way to be vegan is to pretend that all life is equal. And I don't understand that, and that frustrates me because I feel like we should be able to be vegan while also acknowledging that, like I said this in our bonus episode, but like a cockroach is not the same as your Aunt Susan. And I think that should be okay for us to acknowledge. And also, meanwhile, I can also say, but I do not want to kill the cockroach either.
Hot take, Madeline.
Get
ready to get roasted.
Yeah, I think your Aunt Susan's life might matter more than a cockroach's, but also, because I am that type of vegan, I will not kill the cockroach. I prefer not to kill it. I will go out of my way to not harm the cockroach, to the extent that it freaks other people out, even other vegans. I remember one time I was renting a photo studio and there were other vegans there, and a cockroach came and someone was like, I'm gonna step on it, and I was like, please don't step on it, and everyone was like, he's freaking me out, and I was like, will it make everybody feel better if we give him a name? So then we named him Bill, and then for the rest of the day when he came out, everyone was just like, that's just Bill, we're gonna let him chill, and it was fine, and I saved that cockroach's life that day.
But I do like that you were, like, the way you described that, you were like, we all went to this place and a cockroach came, as though the cockroach had been like, shit, man, I know I'm not invited, but, like, I feel like we're close like that.
Really? We were in his house.
Yeah.
He probably lived there. But yeah, so I realized recently that I think a big dividing line in my experience with veganism is the difference between just being vegan or being what I think of as a PETA vegan.
Which is being the most annoying kind of vegan.
Yeah, and I think maybe having, like, a misplaced altruism that, like, your intentions are so good, but you fail to take accountability for the harm that your actions sometimes cause.
Yeah. I mean, there are some instances, which we'll get to later, where it's like, I don't see how you didn't see that.
Yeah, this seems like you should have been aware of the harm you caused. So anyway, because of this, I was super interested in doing an episode about the big bad boogeyman of animal rights.
And I also,
PETA.
Right, like the lab testing stuff, it's so gnarly when you hear about some of the shit that they do, where you're like, look, I'm on fucking PETA's side on this one.
No, yeah.
This is crazy.
Yeah. So, for anybody who doesn't know, PETA is an animal rights advocacy group. PETA, it stands for the People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. And they're famous for their animal rights campaigns. Like, you've probably heard of them throwing paint on celebrities' fur coats or stripping humans naked and putting them in really bizarre scenarios in public to somehow liken humans to animal suffering. And
they do the lettuce ladies.
Oh, I have not heard of the lettuce ladies.
It's like women with it's like a bikini made out of lettuce.
Oh.
This is like a thing.
Okay, yeah, they really like to sexualize the human body.
Mm-hmm.
They post billboards all over major cities. Like here in LA, we even have a PETA building on Sunset Boulevard.
Where's that?
It's in like Echo Park.
That makes sense.
It's been there for a long time now. It's not like new. Like, it's been there for like a decade at least. The one that stands out to me most recently was the thing we talked about in our bonus episode, but is the turkey thing in New York City on Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
It was where they set up a card table, and then they had a man stripped basically naked but wearing like nude underwear, and then he was laying on his back posed like how a turkey would be posed.
Did he have an apple?
No, that would be a pig.
What does a turkey have? Oh, a turkey doesn't have a head.
No, but he had his head still. They let him keep his head. So he's curled up, and then it's like a sign that's like, turkeys are, I don't know, it says something about turkeys.
Did they put the little shoes?
Yeah, they did.
Okay.
Yeah, they had the little white things on the, yeah. So this is the most famous one that happened, and everybody on the internet was just like, what the fuck is this? But yeah, in 2022, PETA had an operational budget of over $82 million for the year. And they used it for stuff like this. They used it in 2022, $16 million on grassroots campaigns, $33 million on public outreach and education, $23 million on research and rescue, $600,000 just on some merch. You need some merch. $12 million on membership development. I'm not really sure what that one means.
I think that means cold calling people to get more members.
For PETA. Okay, yeah. And then $1 million on management and just like operational expenses. And today, they have more than 9 million members and supporters globally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So PETA in the United States has been really effective. Like, you talked about this a little bit. Like, they do a lot of stuff about like animal rights and like testing situations. They inform policymakers and the public. They talk about animal abuse, and they do try to sway legislation and also businesses kind of policies in a way that doesn't harm animals.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that like you sort of notice when you read about PETA is that there's a distinction between sort of like PETA's sort of legislative and advocacy work.
Yes.
Right?
Which is strong.
Which is
very strong, yeah.
And then their image, which is bizarre.
Preposterous? Confusing? Alarming.
It makes me hate them and also love them. Because it does feel... I feel like a lot of the stuff we've read about, I do feel like it's a 14-year-old who just got his first subscription to Adbusters, is the feeling you get when you look at it, where you're like, oh. And
when we get into the founders, we'll talk about the founders in a little bit, but one of them, she just really does have like a troll energy. She's like a delighted troll. Like, she just wants to upset people.
The Anna Wintour one is where she throws the raccoon on Anna Wintour. Amazing.
Yes, she really lives for media attention and to upset people, and that's why I think their public image is so vastly different than the actual advocacy work they do. And their mission is what they say. They say it's an uncompromising stand on animal rights, and they say animals are not ours to experiment on, wear, eat, use for entertainment, or abuse in any other way. And I mixed it up. It's not ours to experiment on, eat, wear, use for entertainment. Yeah, I did the wrong order.
I feel like I couldn't tell what their position on pets more generally was.
Well, they call them animal companions.
Oh, that's right. No pets.
They're not pets. They're animal companions. And, I'll explain it in a little bit.
Yeah.
They've got, there's a lot of myths around PETA. And I will say, there's some stuff, there's some astroturfed fake hatred of PETA.
Yeah.
PETA's been maligned. Unfairly, unjustly maligned, and then sometimes they have been fairly unjustly maligned, I'll say.
Like, a lot.
Like a lot.
A
yeah,
lot.
I think there's a good, healthy mix of both in there, honestly. So yeah, I went in feeling not great about PETA, so I thought the more research I did, I might find that I was wrong and like them. And, I did. I just came out of it kind of just still perplexed by them, but that's okay. So when they talk about their mission, which is like the uncompromising stand on animal rights, when they say uncompromising, they mean it. And they themselves acknowledge that they have sometimes controversial opinions. And a lot of their opinions stem from the viewpoint that is based on what we discussed in our bonus episode on the Patreon, which is this idea of speciesism as popularized by Peter Singer. Mm-hmm. And PETA says, they're working to dismantle speciesist systems that support the belief that all other animal species are inferior to humans. And this idea that all life on the planet is inherently equal is, yes, I think, the dividing line between PETA's form of activism and other animal rights activism that might come about, where you're like, I don't think they're the same, but I also don't want to hurt them. Mm-hmm. And I think that's possible. So I know that speciesist line is the main thing that stops me from being interested in PETA as an organization, but I didn't know much beyond that before doing this episode about what PETA was up to. So we know there's a lot of criticism that gets thrown PETA's way, and some of it's valid and some of it's not, and we're going to talk about it all. So, PETA obviously didn't invent being vegan or animal rights, right? Veganism itself, that was first coined in 1944 by a British woodworker named Donald Watson.
Oh.
You know about that? Yeah. But veganism as a concept obviously is way older than that. Like from 973 to 1057 AD, Arab philosopher and poet al-Ma'ari was abstaining from animal products for health and beliefs on the transmigration of souls and animal welfare.
Oh, so he was like, that could be a friend of mine whose soul transmigrated into that pig.
Right. Like our souls are going places, and I think that I should just be safe and not eat anything with a soul. Mm-hmm. And many cultures in India also historically have not eaten meat, and Buddhism and Jainism both came from India, and they went on to influence vegan diets in a lot of Asia and throughout the rest of the world. So in 1951, though, the Vegan Society was officially founded, and they had the manifesto saying the object of the society shall be to end the exploitation of animals by man. And if you listen to our bonus episode, you know that in the 1970s, Peter Singer's famous work, Animal Liberation, a book was published, and that brought a lot of attention to animal rights and advocated for vegetarian or vegan diets. And it also advocated for an end to animal testing and other forms of animal cruelty. And just 5 years after Animal Liberation was published, that is when Ingrid Newkirk and Alex Pacheco, inspired by Singer's work, started PETA.
And one of the interviews I read, I think it was maybe a New Yorker article, it's really funny because it's the first cool thing they do is actually really cool, but there's this like real escalation because I think it's Ingrid Newkirk is like, oh yeah, we just wanted to like find a place for us to maybe do a newsletter where people could like find good vegan restaurants. And then the next thing is like, and then we bought some cameras and we started to do an undercover thing. And it's like, whoa, guys.
Yeah.
Like,
it escalates quickly.
It goes quickly.
So I think like we should start by getting an understanding of who Ingrid Newkirk and Alex Pacheco are, because PETA really is them at the core starting out. It's inspired obviously by Peter Singer's work, but they are very interesting people.
They like attention.
They like attention, and Ingrid Newkirk will tell you that she likes attention. Mm-hmm. She will tell you that she loves media and she loves the spotlight. So Ingrid was born in England on June 11th, 1949. She was raised mostly in India because her dad got a job there. And then as a teenager, she and her dad both moved to the United States.
She actually went to Catholic school in the Himalayas, which I was one of those things where I was like, what the fuck, man?
Yeah, she has a really interesting story.
Yeah, and she was in Florida for a bit and then in Maryland, right?
Yes, so she ends up marrying an American. They ended up getting divorced in 1980, but for a while she was married to this American, and, in 1972 she was living in Maryland, and she was studying to be a stockbroker.
And then
she found some abandoned kittens, and her whole life changed. Oh, I read it was 12, 13.
It was,
Maybe it was a mom cat and 12 kittens, I think that might be it.
And they, like, she took them there and they just immediately...
Yeah, she took them to a nearby shelter. And she takes them to a shelter and she's like, I found these kittens. And the staff is like, okay, well, if you give them to us, we're going to put them down. And she didn't know what that meant. And she was like, okay. And she thought it meant, like, put them somewhere cozy. And she was like, okay, yeah, sure. So she goes outside and she thinks that they're, like, literally just putting these kittens, like, in a little crate and getting them comfy. For a nap. And a few minutes later she comes in, she's like, oh, are they all settled? Can I see them? And the person working is like, no, we killed them. They are dead. And she is apparently horrified.
This is crazy to me because there are foreshadowing.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say, there's some guy on the internet that's running around real angry, calling her the butcher of Newkirk or whatever.
Yes, this is true. And this is interesting because this is considered Ingrid Newkirk's origin story for how she came to care about animal rights. But we see in the future that her practices end up replicating some of the very things that she disliked so much about her first experience with the shelter.
Yeah.
But she was a very determined person, right? So she's so disturbed by this experience that she's like, well, I'm going to get a job at the shelter. Which, to me, I'm like, whoa, that's a real big jump. You want to be a stockbroker, and this messes you up so bad, you're like, never mind, I'm going to work at this shelter?
Yeah, and that she was also like this. The shelter seemed real bad. Like, and like, she was like, this place is dirty, this place is gross, this is not like a good place for cats.
Right. So she remarks that when she starts working at the shelter, she is seeing animals being horribly mistreated, sometimes just violently outright murdered, like not in euthanasia ways, like in really bad ways. And she says that she gets so upset that she starts to go to work early and stay late so she could personally euthanize the animals herself. Because she's like, this way I know they get a peaceful death, not like a violent, bad death. And in an interview with The Guardian later, when she describes this, she says, in the end, I'd go to work early before anyone got there, and I would just kill the animals myself because I couldn't stand to let them go through that. I must have killed 1,000 of them, sometimes dozens every day. Some of those people would take pleasure in making them suffer, and I just felt to my bones this cannot be right. I hadn't thought about animal rights in the broader sense. Working at that shelter, I just said to myself, what is wrong with human beings that we can act this way? And this is really interesting because I think how she explains this really informs a lot of her approach to pets, animal companions, as they get called, and the shelter system in general, which we'll see later. But she ends up eventually becoming an animal cruelty investigator for the county, and she rises to the position of head of the Office of Animal Disease Control in Washington, D.C. in the Public Health Commission.
And she seems very proud of the fact that she was the first director of the DC Pound.
Yes.
This is like
the first woman.
Or I'm sorry, the first
woman director.
The first woman director. She's like, this is so cool. I'm the first woman director of this place.
Right. So then in 1980, she gets divorced, and she and her colleague Alex Pacheco.
Well, did you ever find out how they meet? Like, every article would just be like, well, they had moved in together.
Yeah, I think they just started dating pretty fast, and together they founded a radical animal rights organization, PETA, and the first office was in Newkirk's basement.
And Alex Pacheco is kind of an interesting guy himself. He's
a wild character.
He grew up, his father was a doctor from Mexico. He grew up between Mexico and America. He had
in the Midwest, mostly.
In Ohio, like, he went to college in Ohio. He wanted to become a priest at some point.
It's so wild.
I will say, like, you know, Peter Singer, Ingrid Newkirk, Alex Pacheco, even Dan Matthews, there's a lot of sort of, like, I won't say misplaced, I will say displaced, like, religious, like, energy.
Yeah, which is interesting because Peter Singer, who had the foundation that PETA would later be founded based on, he was vehemently atheist. But it is true, there is like a religious dogmatic kind of approach to this, a spiritual idea of like moral good, of pure good and evil that gets wrapped up in all of this. And Alex Pacheco talks about watching the Vietnam War on television, for example, and believing like the United States is good and democracy is good and I need to defend democracy against communism. And that was something really formative in his childhood, but he was too young to enlist in the army. So instead, he wrote to the CIA and asked if he could become a CIA agent to help fight communism.
How old is he?
He's a teenager at this point.
He's like 15, 16.
Yes, and the CIA is like, no, what? You're a child. So then he applies to the FBI, and he actually gets a job working at the FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C. They accept him. But just days before he's supposed to go to start this job, he gets talked out of going by his 2 mentors, as he describes them, Father Thomas, because religious, right? And a martial arts expert named Steve Adams. Yeah. He's a really interesting character. So instead of going to work for the FBI to fight communism, whatever, okay, he enrolls in the scholastic program for ecclesiastical students, and over the next year studies to become a priest while living with 3 priests and 7 brothers. But after 1 year in the program, he ends up taking a behind-the-scenes tour of a slaughterhouse, and he is like, oh my God, this is horrible. Animal rights are my new passion. So within days after going on this tour, he ends up starting this organization called the Ohio Animal Rights Committee at Ohio State University. And in the first month, he receives 3 death threats from trappers and hunters for his work.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, he dives straight in. So in 1979, he leaves college and he goes to work as a crew member aboard the Sea Shepherd under Captain Paul Watson. And it's the Sea Shepherd's first whale protection campaign. So they're going out to try to protect whales.
Oh, are these the people... I actually think this is quite noble, who, like, go after, like, whaling boats.
They are, yes. Yes, some of them are noble. Some of them target indigenous whalers in a really weird way.
No, that's not great.
His, I don't think, was that starting out. Yeah. So he did. He sailed across the Atlantic Ocean, and their mission was to ram into the most notorious whale-killing ship, which was called the Sierra. So... they take their boat, the Sea Shepherd, and they fortify it with a bunch of concrete, and they're like, we're just going to ram into these whaling boats. And in the end, both ships sunk in Portuguese waters. Yeah.
I'm assuming that was sort of the goal. Like, they were we did our thing.
Yes, exactly. So, obviously, he survives, and, you know, prior to this happening, though, when the crew was in Portugal, Portuguese authorities had confiscated his passport and Watson's passport and a few other people so that they couldn't leave the country because they didn't trust them. So to avoid being captured, Pacheco says he swam across the border into Spain and then hitchhiked to Madrid and spent 3 days in an airport waiting for a passport and a ticket to London. I mean, it's just like a wild story about his life. And then he's like, when I got to London, I worked with Ronnie Lee, who was the founder of Animal Liberation Front, ALF. And we see that PETA and ALF kind of have a buddy-buddy deal going forward.
There's some I can't remember in what article, but some comparison is made between PETA and the ALF between Sinn Féin and the IRA. Like, the sort of, like, public, like, presentable one, and the people who are like, no, we bomb research facilities. Right. So, and then obviously, like, the Humane Society would be the even more public presentable version of PETA. So, you know, you have this kind of like hierarchy of like status quo, I guess. So Pacheco was apparently really great on this whale ramming expedition because he got named Sea Shepherd's Crew Member of the Year after that. I have to, like, the fact that they have Employee of the Month on the whaler hunter boat. Yeah. I just gotta... Do you think they put his picture on the wall?
I think they must have. They must have. With, like, a cool old-timey frame.
Or gave him, like, a mug.
I don't know about the mug, but definitely the picture. Definitely the picture.
I hope they gave him a mug.
Yeah, they must have. So while in England, he also ended up working with the British Hunt Saboteurs Association. So he would try to disrupt hunts, and he would physically clash sometimes with up to 40 hunters at a time. And these hunters would be on horseback, and they'd use whips, and they would use the whips to try to fight the saboteurs. And some saboteurs ended up getting, like, scarred for life. They'd get, like, whip marks across their face. So he was really in animal defense. Yeah. Like, he was doing it hardcore. And when his visa expired, he returned to the United States and he moved to Washington, D.C., where he met Ingrid Newkirk. And he was working as a lobbyist for animals at the time. And he organized the first animal rights civil disobedience training sessions in the United States. So the 1980 comes around. He meets Ingrid. They fall in love, I'm guessing. Sure. They start... They
start a newsletter for the vegetarian restaurants. That's how they put it in the beginning, where it's like, You guys got real hard.
Yeah, they got real hardcore really fast. Yeah.
Like Alex is already there.
Yeah, Alex is already there. He's bringing Ingrid with him. Yeah. So on August 21st, 1980, Ingrid and Alex officially start PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, and they organized the first World Day for Laboratory Animals protest in the United States and the first demonstrations against chicken slaughter at Arrow Live Poultry, which ended up actually getting closed in Washington, D.C. from this. And early on, from the jump, PETA was trying to expose and litigate against, government and private research laboratories that used animal testing. And the most famous case is probably one of the first things they did, which is Silver Spring in 1981.
Yeah, so the Silver Springs, this was a series of experiments run by this guy, Edward Taub. I hope I'm saying his name right.
I think that's how I would say it.
That looks right. So Taub had been... I guess you'd call him a primatologist. He'd gone to Columbia, and I think at some point transferred. He seems to have run afoul of his advisor at some point because he was putting out theories about the relationship between motor skill and nerves that were different than predominant theories because he thought that relationship was a genetic endowment as opposed to a learned behavior.
Oh, okay.
And so, at the time, and I don't know how to say this word, he's doing this thing to these, macaque monkeys, is that how you say that? Mm-hmm. And the monkeys are Chester, Adidas, Sisyphus, Domitian, Big Boy, Augustus, Titus, Nero, who are subject to a procedure called deafferentation, which is the cutting of sensory nerves. And this was...
Oh, God, I hate that. Ugh.
So, done at a federally funded research facility called the Institute for Behavioral Research in Silver Springs. And it was the case in many instances that they had figured out a way to do this in utero, to cut the nerves, and the idea was to figure out the ways in which the macaque monkeys would accommodate themselves to not being able to feel their limbs in a lot of instances.
It's so brutal. It's so brutal.
It's really grim. And, right. So Pacheco at some point shows up at Edward Taub's office, and I think it's in May of 81, and he is saying, I'm a student, I want to get an internship here. And Taub says, no, I don't have anything for you, but you can volunteer. And Pacheco basically says, sounds great, and doesn't say anything about being a member of PETA or an animal rights activist. And so he's volunteering, doing a procedure at the IBR that is called the acute noxious stimuli test, which involves immobilizing one of the monkeys in a chair restrained by the neck and wrists. And there are pictures of this, and it's that Pacheco, it's one of the grimmer things. And I should mention also, Pacheco, when he grew up in Mexico, did grow up with a animal companion. Is that the word we're going with for this thing?
I'll call him a pet. Yeah.
A macaque monkey named Chi-Chi. And at a later point, he's like, hey man, I know that these primates have all the same sort of feelings and stuff as humans, right? But so the acute noxious stimuli test involved restraining the monkey and applying a hemostat, essentially a surgical clamp, to various areas of the monkey's body. He claims that one of the assistants would apply the clamp to Domitian, specifically his genitals.
Oh, God.
It's not great. More horrors of the IRB. IBR. Alex Pacheco found a freezer in the lab containing the corpse of a monkey named Caligula who died after developing gangrene. The lab was also infested by cockroaches and mice, and the wire cages were cut so that loose, rusty wires would protrude into the cages, which were also not cleaned because of the way that they were fixed to the wall.
Yeah.
A lot of monkeys had unbandaged sores. Several monkeys had either partially or fully missing fingers.
So bad.
Sorry, this is almost...
it's okay.
And says Pacheco, I had a monkey once as a pet, the same kind of monkey. Anyone who's ever lived with a primate knows they have minds just like people. They have personality. Some of the monkeys were distant, others afraid. One of the monkeys who had both of his arms disabled, he described as the most depressed monkey. So either the monkeys, he said they would do one of two things. They would either try to escape out of the cage when you open the cage, or they would run back to climb to the back of the cage to get away from you that way. And he said this monkey was the most depressed and also the most obedient because having both of his arms broken, he couldn't climb out of the cage to get away from you, nor could he climb to the back of the cage. So he would just sit there sort of, despondent.
God, it's so fucked.
It's fucked.
It's so bad.
So, more experiments. They would attach electrodes to the monkey's restrained body, and the monkeys would be forced to try to squeeze a bottle of fluid with his surgically crippled arm in order to stop the painful electrical shock. Says Alex Pacheco, the ceiling and walls of the chamber were covered with blood.
Oh, God.
It's
brutal. It's really, really, really brutal. And this is the thing that we see about PETA is, like, they do a lot of good work. And they also do a lot of really bad work. And it's really hard to reconcile these things in your head.
Yeah. So, essentially, PETA, Alex Pacheco, Ingrid, by the way, is standing with a walkie-talkie outside. At some point, Pacheco gets it so that he has volunteered to be at the facility late at night by himself. So he's taking pictures and documenting things. And Newkirk is standing outside with, like, a walkie-talkie to warn him. And eventually they sort of consult with a primatologist, a physician who's worked with primates and others, and they're trying to figure out how to take a legal case, or bring a legal case. And eventually they do, like, they sneak these sort of experts in to show them the facility. And the people will say, this is worse than anything that they could possibly imagine. And so they eventually go to the Silver Springs police sheriff, or police head of the police, Richard Swain, who conducts a raid and is quoted as saying it was absolutely filthy, just incredibly dirty. Like nothing I've ever seen. I've worked in murder and narcotics and vice, but this was the first time I went into a room and felt legitimately concerned for my health just being there. So Taub, who was out of town on vacation at the time, comes back, realizes what's happened, and he and his assistants, John Kuntz, the one who Alex Pacheco had said he'd seen clamping the genitals, are tried with 13 counts of misdemeanor animal cruelty. Taub is convicted of 6, while Kuntz is convicted of nothing, on the assumption that, like, Taub was the one who ordered all these tests, so Kuntz can't be held liable. And I will say about this that Taub maintains his innocence, and in 1982, a year after the trial, which happened in October, because it was a misdemeanor case, it was initially heard without a jury, and he took it to a jury in 1982, and all but one of the charges was overturned by the jury. He brought in his own medical experts who just said, like, this is normal, the things that they're talking about aren't that bad, this is not crazy. At one point, he says, I don't understand what the big deal is. We cut their nerves so they couldn't feel pain.
Wow.
Right. Mm-hmm. So it's hard, right, because it's one of those things where, like, It's so grim. There's a funny little side quest thing where, so when they confiscate the monkeys, they take them to this woman, Lori Linner's house, who they, like, have to, like, remodel her house just because they don't know where to put the monkeys. And so the monkeys are getting like, fresh food for the first time. This was one of the things, is that the Purina chow that they were given was, like, 6 months past its due date. All of this bad shit. But they are allowed to watch daytime soap operas.
Oh, that's good.
Like,
so they just go to this lady's house and watch TV with her and hang out and relax?
Yeah, and they eat good food, and they, like, the two monkeys who have, like, a strong bond with one another, they put them close together so that they can hang out.
Okay, that's good. That feels a little better.
At some point, they are just, like, escaped.
Oh.
For, like, a couple weeks and brought back, but then eventually, like, they're housed eventually permanently in Florida.
Okay.
And essentially what happens is, by 1984, all the charges are dropped. The one charge that had continued to stick, Taub had it appealed on the grounds that because he was a federal researcher, the Maryland animal cruelty statutes didn't apply to him.
Wow.
And so that was dropped. He maintains, or at least as late as, like, 96, when he was being interviewed still a lot about this, like, that he has been unfairly maligned, that he cannot get research grants. He works at a university, I think, in Alabama, these days as a lecturer, but he's not doing the kind of research he was then.
Yeah, which I would say is probably good.
That's great to me, because I'm like, this is
barbaric.
You sound sociopathic, like,
right, and the fact that it's so normalized that you're like, this is normal, I don't see the issue. You're like, okay, well, that's a systemic failing.
Yeah, and this is one of those things where it's sort of like, you know, he felt as though the sort like the other thing was these 13 monkeys, not the only monkey. Like, he was like a mass murderer of monkeys for a long time before this. And would euthanize monkeys after, you know, realizing that they weren't going to do what his experiment. But he did seem to prove that there was, like, that some of the monkeys were able to use their nerve-cut limbs after learning, like, adapting, essentially, in these ways where it's like, I don't know, this seems like one of those things that's like, this is a pretty penny ante kind of outcome for the amount of cruelty you've inflicted.
To learn this one very small thing that... it's not great.
And... Right, like, to the point where it's like, is cruelty the point?
Yeah.
Right,
Or is it like an ego thing, where it's like, who cares who you hurt as long as your own research is advanced and you put your name on something a little bit?
Yeah, and it seems like, I mean, he maintains his innocence. He maintains that the things that he did were perfectly acceptable, normal practices, and as we'll learn, these are normal practices in animal testing.
Very, very horrifying, though.
And,
but this is wild that this is what they're doing a year into PETA being founded. They are going undercover, and they are taking down this really barbaric federally funded research facility of animal
so it's not cruelty. A federal facility, it's just federally funded research, right? Yeah. And the like, you know, my takeaway from this is, like, a lot of things that end up characterizing sort of PETA going forward, I feel like are already there, which is, on the one hand, there's this, like, extraordinary, like, there's this commitment that I'm just like, holy shit, guys, like,
they're in it.
They're
all in.
On the other hand, when the raid on the behavioral research facility happens, Alex Pachenko is already called the media. Which, like, for whatever reasons, that was illegal in Maryland to, like, call the media before a raid.
Interesting.
And like, Richard Swain, I think, the sheriff or police chief or whatever, was, like, pissed about it, but, like, we're already here, we're just gonna do it.
Right, and that is a tactic. No, we see that PETA utilizes the media in a really effective way going forward. That's a big part of how they interact with their objectives, right? Mm-hmm. It's a series of policy things. It's putting pressure legally on people, and it is also putting media pressure on people.
Yeah, and when we start talking about Dan Matthews, I feel like that the balance changes with him, right? It becomes more media spectacle, or that's the thing he seems the most into is doing the media spectacle.
Yeah, and Dan Matthews, when does he join PETA?
He joins in the mid-90s.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But he, his position, I feel like he is now, all of the stuff that they're doing now with, New York Fashion Week or, Thanksgiving, this is Dan Matthews sort of directing that.
So we'll talk about that coming up. So this is, so early on, right? 1982 is when it kind of goes to court to trial, right?
October 81, and then it gets overturned in 82, and then the last conviction by 84.
But all throughout the 80s, we see PETA is really going hardcore on tackling animal welfare in medical testing, in roadside attractions, and in the fashion industry. And this is something they get on for decades, and they are actually effective at legislating things to defend animals, and also pressuring independent businesses and independent research facilities. And sometimes they do alienate the public in the process, but their techniques are effective in a lot of ways. So by 1983, PETA already got a U.S. Department of Defense underground wound lab shut down. I don't know if you know what a wound lab is.
No.
Oh God, it's so bad. It's where oh God, it's horrible. They intentionally injure animals to see the effects on them, and also sometimes to learn how to treat the wounds. So PETA, by 1983, got one of these underground wound labs shut down, and they achieved a permanent ban on shooting dogs and cats in military wound laboratories, which had been standard practice before.
The fact really that had to be stated, but okay.
Really, really awful. In 1984, PETA succeeded in getting a Texas slaughterhouse operation closed down. And at that Texas slaughterhouse, 30,000 horses had been trucked in and left to starve in frozen fields without shelter. 30,000 horses, and they managed to get that place shut down. In 1985, PETA ended up going to the media, publicizing the gross mistreatment of animals at City of Hope in California. And the government suspended more than $1 million of federal funding, and that was a lab that they were funding. So this, the Silver Springs thing, they've learned a lot from this experience, and they're just taking that and running with it. In 1986, they also got another research laboratory in Maryland to stop confining chimpanzees to isolation chambers. So this is where we see, too, their goal is to get this stuff shut down, but they will take small wins. They're like, well, if we can't end it, can you at least make these marginal changes to slightly improve the quality of life for these animals while they're there? And these incremental steps actually do change a lot, practically. And we talked about this in our bonus episode, but they both read Animal Liberation, which is Peter Singer's work, and one of the things about him is that he's utilitarian. So you want to minimize suffering and maximize pleasure. So you see that they're like, well, we can't shut this place down, but can we minimize the suffering of the animals that are in it? And that kind of helps guide how they interact with their kind of campaigns here. So, they couldn't get the research lab shut down in Maryland, but they could get them to stop confining the chimpanzees to isolation chambers, at least. In 1987, PETA stopped a plan by Cedars-Sinai, which if you live in LA, that's one of our biggest hospitals.
And it's the bougie one.
Yeah, and it is bougie. It's where the rich people go. And Cedars-Sinai had been coming up with this plan to ship stray dogs from Mexico to California for medical experimentation. And PETA got wind of this, and they managed to stop this plan before it happened. And gradually, just throughout the 80s and 90s, we see the organization start to appeal to main industries, cosmetics, pharmaceuticals, which had traditionally been using animals for extensive and invasive testing of their products. And they also started putting media pressure on these companies to discontinue animal testing in favor of cruelty-free approaches. So the way that kind of worked when they did this is they would pick a target, and they would go all in on the target. And sometimes they would write the target letters first. And they'd be like, hey, just so you know, we're PETA. We're an animal rights organization, and we're targeting you. here are our demands. Here's what we want you to do. And we'll give you a chance. And if you don't take it seriously and you don't do it, we're going to start to put on public media pressure. So they would start with this very personalized approach. And if you didn't listen, if you didn't comply, if you didn't try to work with them, then they're like, okay, we're going to launch this public campaign. And this is pretty effective. They also, meanwhile, are still doing undercover operations. Like in 1988, they conducted a year-long undercover investigation at BioSearch, which is a cosmetics and household product testing lab. And they uncovered more than 100 violations of federal and state anti-cruelty laws there against animals. And in 1989, through these campaigns where they're like, we're doing undercover research, we're writing direct letters, and we're applying media pressure, they had managed to persuade Avon, which was huge at the time, Benetton, Mary Kay, Amway, Mattel, and Hasbro to all stop testing on animals.
I mean, that's cool. Like, PETA does good shit.
Within 9 years of being started. That's pretty impressive. And those are huge companies. So when we get to the 1990s is when we see PETA really start to take hold kind of as like a media spectacle.
And that's, I feel like, the Dan Matthews thing. Like, one of his campaigns was the Unhappy Meal. Did you learn about this?
I do remember this. But first, why don't you introduce Dan Matthews and kind of talk about who he was and what he did going into the 90s? So,
he's currently the vice president, but he started as, like, a receptionist. And before that, his sort of origin story that he, like... If, you know, Ingrid had her kittens and Alex had his whales or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, or his pet, you know,
or
macaque.
The Vietnam War, depending on your...
That one, I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Like,
ideologically, a lot of these PETA people, it's like we got the veganism thing in common and we got nothing else in common, me and these people.
Dan has a flounder.
The fish?
A fish.
Okay.
So, he describes himself as a fat gay punk.
Okay, cool.
From Orange County.
Oh, Orange County. Okay, interesting.
So he's not... If you're from Southern California, you might know that if you are a fat gay punk in Orange County, you might not be having the best time.
No, life might be hard for you. It's a very conservative place. Very conservative and wealthy.
Yeah. And so one day after being gay bashed, at school, he goes on a fishing trip with, I think, his dad. Sorry. I just put...
David keeps putting his hand in front of his mouth when he's talking. We're trying to work on it for the audio quality. It's okay. All right, Dan Matthews.
So he goes on this trip and he said, and he sees this dead fish and he says this dead or dying fish is the only thing that he can relate to. And so this starts him on he never eats meat after that.
Okay.
Which is like...
Okay. You know, I think all of us vegans, we have this story. I have Modog with the rope toy. You know, his is real goth, honestly. He's like, this dead fish, this is me in the world.
But he spends some time as he's like 6'5", like every article is also like, this guy's super hot. That's like the other, he's like a model for like Fiat at one point, and is also working as like a gay sex worker in Italy. This is... By the way, and like lots of articles.
Okay, like so everyone's like, we're foaming at the mouth over how hot this man is.
This guy's so amazing, but he's like, I hate these people. This is so bad.
Right.
Like, this is so shallow. No one cares about the dead fish.
Right.
Right. And so he goes to work as a receptionist for PETA. And he starts spearheading these sort of... He's like, if you think of PETA as like the people who like invade fashion shows,
yes.
as they did,
which they'll start to do in the 90s. We'll get into.
Yeah, or have like Pamela Anderson doing her stuff
when they're really hitting the media hard in the 90s.
This is like he had I think it's Calvin Klein is a murderer painted on like all of the Calvin Klein signs for a while.
So he goes fashion with it.
He's fashion.
He brings
That's
an
his
artistic element to PETA.
But he also did the Unhappy Meals, which were they would leaflet outside of McDonald's, and specifically 2 children.
Yes.
This was this wasn't like, hey, don't buy your kids the Happy Meal. It was giving kid language, but not kid appropriate.
Yeah.
Like, descriptions of how their hamburgers were made.
Yeah, this is something PETA really gets into. They're like, most children, when they learn what meat is, they are not into it. And they have to be socialized to accept it. So we're going to capitalize on that moment by trying to hit kids at that stage of their life where they're already like, this feels wrong. And they would do this comic book style artwork that would say like, mommy is a murderer, that would show like a mom in the kitchen butchering a rabbit to make dinner with, or daddy is a murderer, and it would be like their dad fishing, but it would be like these horrifying, grotesque images that were like comic book style illustrations that were really terrifying. And it was, to try to hit this moment where kids naturally are like, I don't think that's right that we're eating this.
No, the Unhappy Meals apparently came with a toy, like, dismembered or decapitated cow to show, like, this is what you are doing.
Yeah, this is what you were eating, yeah. So in the 90s, PETA started to get more media savvy and I would say more fashionable, more hip. And it makes sense that this guy was involved in this. So in the 90s, they really started to target the fashion industry, for example. They managed to get Armani, Calvin Klein, and Ralph Lauren to all pledge to go fur-free. They started really targeting celebrity endorsements, which helped with funding as well. And they just started trying to get a lot of media coverage everywhere they could. And when we think about like Ingrid, at the time, she is like, the media is good. I want the media attention and we're going to do whatever possible to get it. And later in a New Yorker article, a guy would go sit in on one of the brainstorming sessions for PETA and what they would come up with, around this time. And the brainstorming sessions were literally like, what can we get away with and what will make people notice? And they literally were just like, we'll do anything that just gets us attention. It doesn't have to be good attention, just are people paying attention? And that's the most important thing. And that was really their approach in all of this. So in 1990, they targeted Las Vegas. And they managed to expose, I remember this actually, you might remember it too. They exposed that Las Vegas entertainer Bobby Berosini was beating orangutans that were used in a show backstage in Las Vegas.
Oh, I remember that, yeah.
Yes, and they managed to get his wildlife permit suspended and his show closed. And I remember this on the news. So we were kids. I was like 4, and I remember this just being background to my life. They also made their first vegetarian commercial, they called it, and it was like a sensation. It was called Meat Stinks, and it was with Katie Lang.
Oh.
Yeah.
I love Katie Lang.
Yeah, Katie Lang's cool. And she actually got banned on country radio networks because people hated this so much. But it got such massive press coverage that her album ended up going gold anyway. And PETA took her gold record and they put it up at their Virginia headquarters.
Yeah.
So this is when they're like, okay, we can use celebrities, we can get press coverage, and we can lay pressure on people.
Paul McCartney is somewhat famously very, like, he's donated a bunch of money to PETA and stuff like that. And is like, he's got quotes on the wall over at PETA.
Yeah, exactly. So they really start to lean into the celebrity thing. So in 1992, PETA does another undercover investigation, and they look into foie gras. So they do this, and apparently it is so harrowing that, one, it prompts the first ever police raid on a factory farm in U.S. history, and 2, they get a bunch of restaurants to swear off foie gras forever. They're like, we're not selling that because it's so unethical.
Yeah.
And then also that same year, they launched their famous Rather Go Naked Than Wear Fur campaign. And this is where we see them start to really play into sex. And Ingrid later is like, sex sells. Everybody likes sex. People love sex. So, like, why wouldn't we use sex to get attention? Our goal is to get attention, to bring attention to our cause. And if you listen to our bonus episode about Peter Singer's ideology in his book, Animal Liberation, that came out in 1975, that they're basing this all on, he says that basically proselytizing and evangelizing about animal rights is one of the most important things you can do. So PETA takes this to heart, and they're like, we just need people to pay attention to our message. So they launch this Rather Go Naked Than Wear Fur campaign, and it starts on the streets of Tokyo outside of a Japanese fur expert. And this is led by Dan Matthews and Julia Sloan. So the protest ends up making headlines around the world, and it kind of feeds into future development of this naked celebrity ad series they do, where they start taking, nude photos of celebrities, but you can't really see anything, and it says, like, I'd rather go naked than wear fur.
Yeah, and Dan Matthews at one point does brag later that, like, the fur industry has lost, like, 80% of its, like, market share since this ad campaign, and PETA wants to take responsibility for that.
Yeah, and I think they can. I mean, these ad campaigns, they were everywhere. I remember seeing these ads. And in 1993, they also launched a hard-hitting campaign against General Motors. So they're going for, like, the big names. They are not messing around. And they are targeting General Motors' use of live pigs and ferrets in crash tests. This is what they were doing. They were putting live animals in crash tests to see the effects of crashing on, like, a living creature. And PETA hit them so hard that the result was an all car crash tests on animals stopped worldwide. Not even just in the United States. Around the globe, everyone was like, we got to do something about this.
This is like the shooting the dogs thing, where it's like, why did somebody have to tell you this?
Maybe don't put a ferret in a car crash, you fucking weirdo. This is crazy. Yeah,
like, that's the behavior of not well people.
Yeah, it's not good. Also in 1994... a PETA investigator films a California furrier electrocuting chinchillas by clipping wires to the animal's genitals. This again with the animal's genitals. What the fuck is this? And he ends up getting charged with cruelty to animals. And in a different undercover expose that same year, they also caught a fur rancher on videotape just, like, brutally murdering minks. Like, really bad. They were injecting them with a weed killer. It was really, really bad. And these went pretty viral, and these fur farms had to agree to stop using such fucked up death methods, these agonizing death methods. So then also in 1994, PETA supporters occupy Calvin Klein's office in New York, right? And eventually Calvin Klein has to have a meeting with a PETA representative because it's like, you can't keep targeting me. And this is what they do. They send the letter and they're like, just so you know, we're going to target you. And at first people are like, who's PETA? I don't really care. You know, I kind of know who they are, whatever. But then they started launching the campaigns when they got ignored, and they made it impossible to ignore. So then it gets to this point where you're like, well, I got to comply with these people. So they have this meeting, and less than a month after this campaign starts against Calvin Klein announces that he's no longer using any fur, and he is the first major fashion designer to do so in the U.S.
Yeah, I mean, the sort of, like, essentially it's blackmail. Yeah. Right? Like, they're like, it works.
Yeah, they're like, we will take you down. But they're doing it for this, like, righteous, just cause. So you're like, you know, who can complain? So in 1995, PETA's efforts also led to the first ever cruelty charges filed against a factory farmer for cruelty to chickens. And this is major. These are factory farms. This is a place where animals go to die. They are being bred to be killed. And PETA manages to get cruelty to animal charges filed against them. And that's their job. And the guy, this factory farmer, he was taken down for allowing chickens, like tens of thousands of chickens, to starve to death. And the president of the company pled guilty to this. He was like, yeah, I did this. I murdered all these chickens. PETA also in 1995 persuaded Mobil, Texaco, Pennzoil, and Shell, and a few other oil companies to start covering their exhaust stacks because they showed them that millions of birds and bats were getting trapped in them and were burning to death. So they have all this, like, really horrifying footage. And this is something I think of as being synonymous with PETA, like showing you fucked up shit you don't want to see of animals in agony. Yeah. And that's what their thing is doing. And it's also based on that Peter Singer ideology we talked about in the Motors episode, where it's like, no, you have to show people. Don't let people live in ignorance of, like, the suffering of the animals. And to me, being vegan, I'm like, but you're still killing them. Yeah. You know, like, the factory farmers are still killing them. But that utilitarian idea that Peter Singer put forth was like, but if you can ease the pain a little bit, that's better than nothing. Yeah. And that's really the PETA mindset. So meanwhile, while this is happening, PETA is still working to grow its grassroots advertising campaigns. Like, you've got PETA activists crawling through the streets of Paris with leg traps around their feet.
Oh, like for, like, a bear trap?
Yeah, they're dumping buckets of money soaked in fake blood on audiences at the International Fur Fair. Yes, you mentioned this earlier, but to protest the use of fur in the pages of Vogue, PETA once deposited a dead raccoon on the plate of Anna Wintour, right, the magazine editor, while she was eating lunch at the Four Seasons in Manhattan.
And they also closed down the Vogue office, and Ingrid Newkirk is quoted as saying, I'm sorry, offices are closed due to cruelty at one point, which is
It's pretty good.
It's good. I'm just like,
they're good. She's made for media, this lady.
Mm-hmm.
So in 1996, Newkirk is like, all right, we're going to move PETA from Maryland, right, to Norfolk, Virginia, because it's cheaper and we can get a bigger building. So they get this huge building. It's like a $2 million building. And by 2003, they've got like 100 people working there. And they've got the quotes on the walls, like you mentioned, right? They've got a bunch of quotes on the walls. One of them they have is Leonardo da Vinci, and it says, "The day will come when men such as I will look upon the murder of animals the way they now look upon the murder of men." So very inspiring. And they are just hitting it hard. They got this campaign against NASA, and NASA ends up pulling out of Bion, which is a joint U.S., French, and Russian experiment in which monkeys wearing straitjackets were having electrodes implanted in their bodies to be launched into space. PETA gets that shut down. They're doing some good work. PETA convinces Gillette to observe a moratorium on animal testing after years of hitting them hard in the media. That also... Part of that included the presentation of shareholder resolutions at Gillette's annual meetings, and support from celebrities like Paul McCartney, like you mentioned, but also Lily Tomlin, Hugh Grant, and Elizabeth Hurley. So they're getting this really big name at the time.
I mean, this is the 90s.
This is 1996, and you're getting Hugh Grant and Elizabeth Hurley? Like, that's you're fucked.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, if you're Gillette and you've got fucking Hugh Grant and Elizabeth Hurley in your offices being like, yeah, do what they say. What are you going to do? These are some of the most famous actors on the planet at the time. In 1997, PETA had another investigation that documented the anal electrocution of foxes, and that led to the first ever guilty plea by a fur rancher to cruelty to animal charges. So they're just going in and they're like, no, like, you just because you're killing these animals doesn't mean we're not going to, like, there's an expectation of a baseline level of action. So 1999, though, comes around, big changes. Alex Pacheco leaves PETA to go work on other projects. He still does animal activism, but he leaves PETA.
He worked on a couple movies at some point, right? Like, this is something, like, you look at and you're like, oh, there's one that's like a biopic of his life.
Yeah. He's got some other stuff going on. He starts a bunch of foundations, and so he leaves, and Newkirk is just in charge now. And she's like, yeah, PETA technically has a board, but only because we're tax exempt, so we have to. But the board just does whatever I tell them to do. And she says, this is not a democratic organization. I never pretended that it was. I don't know where exactly it would go if it were a democracy, and I'm not willing to give it a try. And this leads to a lot of people who work at PETA being like, I don't know if this is really an animal rights movement or if it's just Ingrid Newkirk's cult.
And that... She gets... power crazed.
She gets a little power crazed. Some people are like, well, she's pretty flexible. She's open to suggestions. Newkirk herself describes, like, interactions, especially with younger employees, where she's like, well, I don't know how social media works. So if somebody who's 25 comes in here and is like, no, this will play well on Twitter, I'm like, okay, it'll play well on Twitter then. What do I fucking know? So she does collaborate with people, but at the same time, she does, I think it would be fair to say she goes a little power mad. Yeah. But they're still doing the work. They're still doing the good work. That same year that Pacheco leaves, they do undercover investigations into pig breeding factory farms in North Carolina and Oklahoma. And this reveals really horrific conditions. Daily abuse of pigs. One pig was skinned alive. And it leads to the first ever felony indictment of farm workers. PETA also conducts an undercover investigation this year into the Nielsen Farms puppy mill in Kansas, which I remember this too. Do you remember this on the news?
I feel like
the puppy mill thing. Yeah, I totally remember this. I was like 12 maybe, and this revealed that these dogs were living in really small enclosures. They were always sick because it was just bad conditions. They were being abused. A lot of them were dying, and this investigation PETA did led to the closure of the facility and a $20,000 fine from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the USDA. And the Nielsens were also permanently disqualified from being licensed by the USDA. So this was major. And this, I think, started actually a lot of mainstream public awareness about puppy mills.
No, this is... I got a neighbor who breeds Frenchies, and everyone... It's so bad. It's grim.
Yeah.
And it's funny because, like, it has, like, single-handedly made him a pariah, where people are just like, we love the Frenchies, they're so cute. You're breeding those dogs. One of those dogs is a puppy and is like being bred already. this is crazy.
Yeah, it's really, really bad. And we actually have a whole episode about dogs that I did with Kenna, and we talk about the Frenchie thing. And the Frenchie thing is wild. So if you're listening and you haven't listened to our dog episode, I highly recommend finding it. But yeah, so PETA's doing all these grassroots campaigns in the 90s. They're doing congressional testimony, and they're also doing like scientific documentation, like underground investigation. And this actually also drives the White House and the EPA to save 800,000 animals from chemical toxicity testing in these like high volume chemical testing programs that were going on in the United States. So they're literally saving millions of animals at this point. So we get to the 2000s, and in the year 2000, there's this campaign that they've been working on for 11 months, and it includes more than 400 demonstrations at McDonald's, like you were talking about. And this happens in more than 23 countries, and it also includes advertising against McDonald's and celebrity involvement. And because of this, McDonald's becomes the first fast food company to agree to make basic animal welfare improvements for farmed animals.
That's great. I mean...
Yeah, they're huge. It's a huge company. Again, not perfect. They're still killing animals and serving meat, but they're like, all right, we'll try not to let the animals live in agony. And following this, the next year, PETA also persuades Burger King to do the same and adopt these huge animal welfare improvements, including conducting unannounced slaughterhouse inspections and giving hens more cage space. Wendy's follows suit right after that. PETA targets Wendy's next. This is all in 1 year.
Yeah.
And they announced plans to change some of their like regulations and rules regarding the handling and slaughter of animals used at Wendy's. And 2002 is when PETA does maybe their most famous thing ever, which is when they go to the Victoria's Secret's runway show and they jump on the stage as Giselle Bundchen is walking down, and they carry signs that say Giselle First Scum. Do you remember this?
I do. I mean, I wrote to you in the notes, I was like, what the fuck is Fashion Week?
Oh, yeah. No, they get really involved at Fashion Week.
Yeah.
But the reason they were doing this is the women were dragged off the stage almost immediately.
Yeah.
And honestly, I hate to say it, but like the picture or like the video of Giselle walking down the runway, completely unbothered, while these women are like throwing themselves in front of her, holding signs that she's first scum and getting pulled off. It just ends up making Giselle look really cool, unfortunately, because she's just so unbothered, you know?
Yeah.
So that one I feel like wasn't as effective. And like I remember this happening, but I didn't even know what they were protesting. It turns out that they were protesting Giselle modeling like a fur campaign for a totally different company. I thought they were protesting Victoria's Secret.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, the more you sort of read about it, like, I feel like they're getting lost in the media stuff as they go on, where they're just sort of like...
Yeah, any attention is good attention.
And at a certain point, like, that kind of backfires, because by the time I was, like, old enough to be kind of aware of PETA, like, I knew about them, but they were also kind of a joke.
Yes, I think that's true. I think they do in the 2000s really end up making themselves kind of a joke. It's true. But they're also doing some insidious things. Like, also in 2002, PETA got a fake medical group that it totally invented called Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. They managed to get this fake medical group published in major newspapers more than 500 times, including in Newsweek, using a fake study, basically, that was just conducted on 7 people that was supposed to demonstrate that a vegan diet helped prevent diabetes.
There's also, I mean, this is, like, Dan Matthews has some quotes that I won't really get into, but, like, I think you and I have talked about the sort of, like, wellness to being kind of a far-right anti-vaxxer type thing.
Yes, there's a pipeline, yes.
But I feel like the hardcore vegan animal rights activist to vaccines are bad, especially because of the animal testing thing. Like, at some point, Dan Matthews ascribes, like, the spread of AIDS to vaccines.
Yes.
Right? In this way where you're just like, I looked it up because I was like, maybe I'm learning something?
No.
And then I, like, went and read a bunch of shit and was like, no, this is dumb.
Yeah. They also opposed COVID vaccine development.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you get this thing where you're just like, okay, guys, like...
They're just literally, like, anything. There's no... And that's the thing. It's not, like, ideologically rigorous. It's not trustworthy. You can't trust them. They have one agenda, and they're like, our one thing is we don't want animals to suffer. And that's it. And we're so hardline about it. everything else, who cares? And we see that comes with making these like moral and ethical considerations as we move forward. And I think it does make it ultimately hard for people to take PETA seriously.
And this is, I mean, at least for me, like, right, there's this, like, thing about, like, the organic intellectual has to come from a class position in which they can express a critique of the class in the terms of hegemonic society, but that means they have to have some damn credibility.
Yeah.
Right? And the more they do shit like this, the more I'm like, you have lost your credibility, so you cannot speak as, like, organic intellectuals trying to express a critique.
Right.
Of...
Yeah, they're just not trustworthy. But meanwhile, they are still doing good work. Like, the same year they do the Giselle Furscum thing, which, like, that's fine, whatever. But then also they get, like, the fake study published. That same year, they also managed to save 6, undernourished polar bears from a tropical circus where they were whipped and forced to perform in sweltering temperatures and really being tortured. So it's like they're also doing this good work as well. And in 2003, they started doing more of, like, the sensational ads. Like, they did this one ad where they compared women being murdered and dismembered by a serial killer to animals being killed for meat. Mm-hmm. And they also, this same year, started doing, like, weird spectacle things. Like, they offered the town of Hamburg, New York, $15,000 if they officially changed their name to Veggieburg instead of Hamburg.
They've jumped the troll shark.
Yeah, they totally have. They're trolling the world. PETA is really trolling the world. But at the same time, they also submitted evidence that led to the mandatory relinquishment of 16 elephants used by the Hawthorne Corporation, which was an elephant rental company. So, they're doing these, like, good things. And then they're also like, hey, Hamburg, New York, we'll pay you if you change your name to Veggieburg. Haha. The next year, 2004, they persuaded chemical companies and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, to drop plans for a bunch of painful chemical tests that would have been done on animals. And people are like, they spared tens of thousands of animals, like their well-being and maybe their lives by doing this. So you're seeing these things go hand in hand. And in 2005, they launched really aggressive campaigns against Honda, Puma, and Keds. And all of them pulled all commercials they had featuring great apes. So this was like a thing, apparently. This is so wild to me because I don't remember this at all. But apparently a lot of people were using apes in advertising. And PETA was really mad about it. So they, like, forced all these corporations to pledge to never use a great ape in advertising again. But I, like, didn't even remember that this was a thing. And now also at the same time, they were really getting into Petco. So Petco was selling, like, birds and, like, some other little animals. And PETA was like, you are not treating these animals well. Like, for years, they had been trying to pressure Petco to stop selling these animals. And Petco finally, in 2005, agreed to stop selling large birds and also to, like, do a better job to care for rats and mice they were selling in their store. So they're doing all this, but at the same time, again, they're still doing things that make it hard for people to take them seriously. Like, that same year, they came under fire from civil rights leaders because they had this traveling campaign that said, "Are animals the new slaves?" And they had these giant panels of photos showing images of animal cruelty juxtaposed with images of, like, Black people being tormented under slavery in the United States. Like, they literally showed a photo of a Black man being lynched in Indiana next to an image of a cow hanging by its feet while being slaughtered. And
they do at some point also do a campaign comparing like animals to Holocaust victims.
Yes, they do, which is wild.
Yeah.
And they have also images linking the civil rights movement with the animals 74 ethnicities 201 liberation movement. Like, I'm not sure what that is, but it's like this thing that they were doing, and it included quotes from Martin Luther King Jr. about Black suffering, and they would, like, misappropriate them to talk about animal suffering instead. And John White, who was an NAACP spokesman at the time, said PETA operates by getting publicity any way they can. They're comparing chickens to Black people. And Mark Potok, who was the director of the Intelligence Project within the Southern Poverty Law Center, said Black people in America have had quite enough of being compared to animals without PETA joining in. And he said the campaign was disgusting. But again, that's the PETA mindset, like John White said. It's like they just want publicity any way they can. So they're like, oh, we upset you? That's good. Now you're paying attention at least.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is I don't pay attention to PETA anymore.
Right.
Because
they like, lost their credibility.
And it's also just like, I don't know, like, how many times can I see someone, like, storm a runway show or, like...
Right.
Right, I'm like, oh, unless you guys... This is not a challenge. Unless you do something crazy, I'm just going to be like, oh.
Yeah, I've seen it before.
Okay.
So the following year, 2006, PETA manages to convince Ralph Lauren to stop selling fur, and they even pulled the fur off the store shelves and donated them to people in Mongolia who were, like, cold.
Yeah.
This is like such a fashion solution that people at Ralph Lauren are like, who's cold? Mongolians. It's just like, okay.
The Derek Zoolander.
It's a very,
Yeah.
This is a very Zoolander moment between PETA and Ralph Lauren, I think. But in 2007, they also were still going undercover, right? And they managed to uncover these really cruel animal experiments funded by major beverage manufacturers like Palm, the pomegranate juice company. Yeah, Palm. Yeah. PepsiCo and Coca-Cola. And they managed to convince all of them to end all of their animal testing. So, 2008, PETA also manages to get agreements to make huge improvements in farmed animal welfare at Safeway and also the company that controls the purchase of chickens for KFCs in Canada. And they also started pushing for, like, vegan chicken alternatives. And also, remember the whole thing about the great apes? How they were like, we got to stop using the great apes in ads, which I'm like, I didn't even know this was a thing. That same year, the Ad Council signed PETA's Great Ape Humane Pledge.
Do you think, this is the thing, do you think there was some, like, ad writer or whatever, like, ad copywriter who, like, was, like, really single-minded and was
He's like, we'll throw an ape in there, it'll go great.
And, like, had, like, no other ideas, and he was just, like, watching this happen, and he was like, shit.
Yeah.
What?
How is this big enough to be a trend? Like, I don't understand. It's pretty wild. There's something else with apes that happens soon, too, that I'm like, what? This was a thing, but I'll say, I don't want to jump ahead of myself here. They also launched, in 2008, an investigation into Aviagen turkeys, who, they were the self-proclaimed world's leading poultry breeding company. And they revealed that workers were torturing, mutilating, and maliciously killing turkeys there. And this is what I mean, where I'm like, I don't think a turkey is the same as a human. I also do not want the turkeys to be mutilated or maliciously killed. Like,
no, I think that's...
I think these two thoughts can coexist, and I'm not sure why this is controversial.
I guess, like, one of the ways I look at it is... And, like, as we've said, I eat fish, I eat meat sometimes, but, like... And I understand that death is a part of that. If I learned that, like, some guy I knew was just, like, torturing turkeys, I would be like, listen, I understand that death is a part of the thing. What is it about you that made you decide to torture the damn turkey?
Right, like, what's appealing about this? And they ended up getting 3 former employees indicted on felony cruelty to animal charges, which was the first felony charges for abusing factory farmed poultry in U.S. history. And 2 became the first factory farmers to be convicted of abusing turkeys. Yes. Like, 1 was sentenced to a year in jail, which was the strongest penalty levied for abusing a factory farmed animal in U.S. history. And all 3 were barred from owning or living with animals for 5 years. Yeah. So PETA also investigated a pig breeding factory farm this same year in Iowa, and they uncovered, horrific treatment of all the pigs there, including the piglets. And the manager of the farm got fired, and the evidence resulted in 22 criminal charges against 6 workers, all of whom admitted guilt and were sentenced to serve up to 2 years probation.
Damn.
Yeah. So in 2009, PETA also investigated an animal dealer called U.S. Global Exotics, and that prompted the largest animal seizure in history. More than 26,000 animals. And the owner ended up fleeing the country to evade federal charges. So they're like hitting everybody hard. It's relentless. And after receiving videos where PETA did an expose of extreme suffering in exotic animal skins, H&M became the first retailer to adopt a policy banning products made from exotic skins in all of its stores worldwide. Also, European Chemical Agency spared up to 4.5 million animals from toxicity testing in a massive EU testing program because they received documentation provided by PETA scientists that was like, this is ineffective and cruel and you don't need to do that. So it's 4.5 million animals that were saved. And also, after nearly a month of intense PETA campaigning against combat training exercise conducted by the Bolivian military. So remember how the U.S. was like shooting dogs and cats in wound training? We're not the only ones. This is very common, I guess, in military training. So PETA was getting on Bolivia because live dogs were being repeatedly stabbed, screaming in agony. It's really, really hard to like listen to or even see. PETA was pressuring them, and the Bolivian Ministry of Defense ended up creating the first ever animal protection regulation, which prohibited the violence, exploitation, and mistreatment that provoked the death of animals. So that was good progress. But again, one of those things where you're like, why were we doing this? What the fuck? Like, this is wild. So, 2010, PETA's still up to its same kind of things, right? They get these like tea companies to stop testing on animals. They have a petition that says that the University of Wisconsin-Madison, right, members of the staff there could face prosecution if they killed sheep in decompression experiments. They're just like hitting everything. They're hitting companies. They're hitting medical testing. They still hitting NASA. Like, for a year, PETA was hitting NASA so hard that NASA ended up canceling plans for a $1.75 million study in which dozens of squirrel monkeys would have been exposed to harmful doses of radiations to test the effect of radiation in space. And then just 1 week after PETA released the results of this like really shocking undercover investigation into professional laboratory research services and filed a complaint with the USDA, this North Carolina-based contract animal testing facility surrendered nearly 200 dogs and more than 50 cats and closed its doors for good. And that was only the second time in U.S. history that a lab was forced to surrender animals and shut down. So PETA is like crushing it by 2010.
Yeah, I mean, they're doing great.
They're doing great work in all of these fields. And less than 6 months after they released an undercover investigation into the labs at the University of Utah, Utah legislators voted overwhelmingly to amend the state law so that government-run animal shelters no longer would be forced to sell dogs and cats to laboratories on demand. They literally had a law that if a lab wanted dogs and cats for medical testing, the shelters had to sell them to them in Utah.
Jesus.
Until 2010, when PETA was like, no more. So, 2011, I remember this too, PETA started targeting Ringling Brothers.
Oh, I do remember this. This was... Yeah.
So they were releasing a lot of video footage, and they were showing that elephants used by Ringling Brothers were being whipped, beaten, and yanked by heavy, sharp, steel-tipped bull hooks behind the scenes prior to performing. It was really, really jarring, really upsetting. And there was like a whistleblower who provided some photographic evidence to PETA. And the USDA ended up fining Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus $270,000, which was the largest fine ever paid by an animal exhibitor for violations of the Animal Welfare Act. And this was all because PETA presented them with all of this evidence of animal abuse. PETA also looked into this ferret dealer in 2011 called Triple F Farms, and that led to more than $44,000 in federal fines and payments for their treatment of ferrets. And that same year, they took on SeaWorld. Oh, yeah. And there is a video game that I sent you a link about that has like some really intense SeaWorld stuff. The SeaWorld thing is interesting because PETA was not the only group tackling SeaWorld at the time. And I've seen people be like, I think SeaWorld was maybe like unfairly targeted and maligned, and they were actually doing a bunch of conservation work. But it depends on your source for this, because other people are like, no, SeaWorld was like really fucked up and evil. What we do know is that PETA did this in a really, like, not great way. They did the thing where they compared animal suffering to, like, the enslavement of black people. And they brought a case with 3 marine mammal experts and 2 former orca trainers. They filed a lawsuit asking a federal court to declare that 5 wild-caught orcas forced to perform at SeaWorld were being held as slaves in violation of the 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Oh, no. And it named the 5 orcas as plaintiffs and sought their release into their natural habitat. Just, like, really weird. So this is, again, where it's like, you're doing anything for attention, but, like, this is not good attention. You should not compare orcas at SeaWorld to the, like, enslavement of black Americans for centuries. I mean, as a legal strategy, how'd it work out? I mean, it didn't. Yeah, and obviously, SeaWorld got a lot of bad press. Right. Because of this. Yes. Which was the goal. They wanted attention, and they wanted to bring down SeaWorld. This is one of the things that, like, I think a lot when I see this, where I'm just like,
you didn't have, like, you could have just stated the facts.
Right.
Right, like, you
But they want all the attention. That's, like, the whole thing.
But the facts are attention-grabbing by themselves.
True. That is true. Okay, so remember all the military testing that involves hurting animals and for all these reasons? Well, there's still this going on. So that same year, PETA managed to get the U.S. military to end the use of monkeys in the Army's chemical attack training courses. So the military was just fucking up animals. Like dogs, cats, like everything. Like so bad. So
the military is like, we can't shoot them with guns. Can we shoot them with chemicals?
Yeah, but we did monkeys instead of dogs. So fucked up. So 2012, we're kind of going along the same course of things, right? They managed to get all top 10 advertising agencies in the United States to sign the Great Ape Humane Pledge, which they're still on.
I honestly think there must have just been one guy.
Yeah, I'm like so surprised this is a thing. I mean, but also if you're like at the ad agency, you're like, yeah, I wasn't planning on using a great ape anyway in an ad, so I guess I'll sign it.
I'm sure there was one guy who was like, shit. Like, I have nothing else.
This is all I got. I'm the great ape guy.
I have my brother-in-law, he's got a great ape. This is
what I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. They also managed to get one company to be the first company ever to implement an official policy banning the sale of down feathers.
They're still, so far as I can tell, they're still on like a thing with Canada Goose over this.
They actually succeeded recently.
Oh, really?
Goose, yes. Yeah, in 2012, also, they donated a bunch of simulators to Egypt, and this allowed Egypt to end the use of animals for medical trauma training, which actually I think is a pretty clever way to go about that. They also released disturbing video footage taken by a whistleblower during trauma training sessions conducted by this military contractor called Tier 1 Group for the U.S. Coast Guard, which showed them stabbing, shooting, and dismembering live goats. And PETA filed an official complaint, and the USDA cited them for violating the Federal Animal Welfare Act and failing to provide, like, anesthesia to the goats, dealing with this. Around the same time, they were still going after, like, corporations for animal testing. They had some successes with bioculture, for example. They also were going after, like, ranches. They had this one ranch where it was, like, a hoarder, basically, and they ended up getting 700 cats seized, which was the most ever in U.S. history, and felony cruelty charges were brought up against this ranch, and then the ranch was closed. There was another, like, investigation into horse racing tracks, and it got, like, all these reforms implemented, all because of PETA. Limitations on whipping, for example, increased drug testing, mandatory horse ambulances on the track, and they also forced them to introduce retirement plans for thoroughbred horses, and they went after the Kentucky Horse Racing Commission and were, like, putting pressure on them. So they started, like, pressuring what drugs were allowed to be used on horses during horse racings. So they also, this same year, this was, like, wild, like 2012 to, like, 2015-16, PETA accomplished so much. They were passing all these, like, resolutions on animal testing after, like, purchasing a bunch of stock. So, for example, there was this one company called BioQual, and PETA purchased enough stock to introduce a shareholder resolution on animal testing. They also ended up purchasing a bunch of stock in SeaWorld, too, so they could try to influence SeaWorld. So this is a technique they're doing. They're like hostile takeover style. They're like, we'll just buy a bunch of stock and then we'll force them to do what we want.
I have to imagine if you're like another stockholder in the company and PETA introduces a bill that's like, we're not going to torture animals, that feels...
You kind of gotta, you're like,
they're doing the blackmail thing again, where it's like, okay, like...
What are you gonna say? You want to torture animals?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not great. That same BioQual company also was first exposed by PETA in 1986 when they released footage of chimpanzees being held in bad conditions there. So they had already had run-ins with PETA. They also, like, rescued some animals from, like, bad zoos. They started doing this thing where they were like, some zoos are bad, some zoos are better, and we're going to rescue all the animals from the bad zoos and put them into the better zoos. There was also this HBO horse racing series called Luck, and 2 horses died on the set of it, and PETA went public and was, like, really putting pressure on them, and they got the whole show canceled. There's so much stuff. They, that same year also did a 2-month undercover investigation that documented thousands of animals being neglected and dying, and many more being cruelly killed. at this place called Global Captive Breeders, which was in Lake Elsinore, California, and they bred and sold reptiles and rats for the pet trade. So the following year after this, they start to work with whistleblowers at a lot of factory farming places. And a lot of states had these laws that were called ag-gag laws. Do you know about this?
No.
It was basically like laws that made it illegal for people to be whistleblowers on like factory farms.
Oh, yeah.
So they started in 2013 really targeting a bunch of different factory farms and targeting ag-gag laws to get the laws overturned and also to, get the conditions talked about more on these factory farms. They had a lot of success with this. They also were still doing the thing with the zoos where they were going in and freeing a bunch of animals from bad zoos and putting them in what they thought were better zoos. They finally, following decades of campaigning, managed to get the U.S. Army to say that it would reduce its use of animals at all in deadly trauma training exercises. So not completely gone, but they were like, okay, fine, we hear you. We're going to do less of this. And they started a campaign against the wool industry, talking about like how wool, while theoretically it was supposed to be safe to remove from sheep, in practice, these sheep were having large chunks of their skin removed with the wool, and they were getting really, really fucked up. They also, at the same time this year, were targeting the dairy industry, and they were talking about calves being, like, brutalized in the dairy industry, and that led to companies like Chipotle and Pete's Coffee and Amy's Kitchen to begin, like, pressuring their suppliers about, like, the conditions of animals. And, yeah, they were just, like, hitting everything so hard. They even hit, in the same time period, pigeon racing organizers, which I didn't even know pigeon racing was a thing.
Is this like the thing that you see in like On the Waterfront or whatever, where the guy has like the little hutch of pigeons on the rooftop? And no,
I thought that was like carrier pigeons.
I think that might just be cute.
Yeah, I don't know what a pigeon race is. It's wild. So then in 2014, they started getting into the Angora wool industry, and I remember these videos. These were really bad. Rabbits being tied down with their fur ripped from their bodies, and this led to a huge ban by more than 70 companies around the world, including H&M, Calvin Klein, Tommy Hilfiger, being like, we're not using Angora anymore. And 2013 also is when the SeaWorld thing really hit like a fever pitch. Everyone was just like, fuck SeaWorld. The stock price tanked, and that's when PETA went in and bought a bunch of the stock so they could have more controlling interest in SeaWorld. So they were hitting SeaWorld hard, and they were also hitting wool really, really hard. And also trying to pressure companies into making animal tested cosmetics like illegal, or at least reducing the amount of animal testing that had to be done. In 2015, they ended up doing this extensive campaign to expose and end cruel and archaic brain experiments on cats at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. That was pretty wild. And they finally, in 2015, after 36 years of protesting, managed to get Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus to pledge to stop using animals in its show by 2018.
Oh.
But what we know is they literally just ended up closing down the circus for good by then. So that was wild. There was an expose also in Argentina that caused Patagonia to drop its wool supplier. There was just like so much stuff they were doing. That same year, this is a really gnarly one that I know about from the internet, but they managed to catch someone who was producing crush videos, which was like fetish content of crushing small animals. Really bad. No. I know. It's so horrible. So it's like, you look at this stuff and you're like, they are doing objectively really good work. And by 2016, they've got SeaWorld to say that they're not breeding orcas anymore. The current generation of orcas at SeaWorld, those are going to be the last ones. We've got scientists all over the world changing their animal testing kind of protocol for drugs and pharmaceuticals and cosmetics. We're stopping pesticide poisoning tests on dogs in 2007 in the United States and in 2013 in the EU. Like, they're just doing so much work around the globe, and they're trying really hard to get like this dog race canceled. Do you know about this dog race?
No, is it like Greyhound?
Iditarod or something?
Oh,
yeah.
no. Oh, that's
What
like,
is that?
That's like the sleds.
Oh, okay.
That's like, and if you have ever watched anything about sled racing.
Never. No.
Like, some of the behavior of folks on sled racing towards their dogs can be really brutal, and it's always justified as, like, no, I'm showing that I am like the
alpha
or whatever. And it's like, no, you're literally just beating your dogs.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. So, just basically through 2017 on, we just see them keeping up with their same techniques, and we see them actually making a lot of progress. They're getting a lot of laws passed. They're getting a lot of animal testing places shut down. They're holding people accountable for animal cruelty. The circus ends up going out of business, and they're still donating like simulators to try to convince like armies and medical training to stop shooting animals to simulate like war wounds for healing. So, but then in 2018, they make headlines for being ridiculous again. Like, they post this thing on Twitter. I don't know if you remember this. It was like, stop using anti-animal language. Did you see this?
No, though we've talked about this, Madeline.
Have we?
I don't do Twitter.
Oh, Twitter. Yeah, we talked about Twitter. I was like, we talked about anti-animal language?
No, I will not. Asking the question, did you see this on Twitter?
Okay.
Go on.
Okay, got it. So they made this chart, and they were like, just as it became unacceptable to use racist, homophobic, or ableist language, phrases that trivialize cruelty to animal will vanish as more people begin to appreciate animals for who they are and start bringing home the bagels instead of the bacon. And they posted this list of like phrases you should not use, like kill two birds with one stone. Instead, you should say feed two birds with one scone.
I'm just gonna say I love some lox on my bagels.
Beat a dead horse? No. You're gonna feed a fed horse. Yeah. And this again leads into this Peter Singer ideology of equating humans with animals, but people really do not like this. And critics were like, you're trivializing racism, sexism, and homophobia by doing this. And this queer news source, Pink News, reported that the post was so bad that one Twitter user was like, I genuinely believe that PETA is a meat industry psyop designed to make veganism look bad. Because literally, how else can you explain the fact that every single one of their ad campaigns and social media posts is deeply embarrassing?
No, that's the other thing. It was like, oh, okay, so it's like racist and sexist and like homophobic in all these weird ways or whatever. It's also corny-ish. Feed a fed fort?
Yes, it's so cheesy. It's like, so true.
Why? No.
Yeah.
That makes me want to make up, like, intentionally, like, triggering to PETA sayings.
I know, right? It makes you hate them. You want to be their enemy because you're like, this is so ridiculous. But while they're doing this stupid shit like this, they're also, like, they had like 12 major initiatives they passed that year, like rescuing animals from bad conditions. They targeted the Tiger King guys. Oh. They saved animals from bad zoos. They got all these laws passed about like new things you couldn't do to harm animals. They got like Dove to pledge for everything to be cruelty free. They even started.
But did they get Dove to change their name to a non-animal?
Wow, I didn't even think about that. They also like got these airline companies to pledge to stop transporting monkeys for animal testing, which I was like, I didn't even think about that. They got to put the monkeys on an airplane. Jesus. And in 2019, they still were continuing this. They managed to get a bunch of people to leave the Iditarod race. They got like Jack Daniels, State Farm, Wells Fargo, and the Coca-Cola Company to all pull. So they're like, they're kind of a cultural powerhouse at this point.
I have to imagine, I don't know how many people are watching the Iditarod, like as like a media.
I didn't even know what it was.
It's right, like I think, I don't know, maybe some holdouts who like really like. They have, like, a lot of Call of the Wild posters in their house or something. I
could see that. Yeah, maybe. It's, like, romanticized with a certain type of person.
Yeah.
Also, like, into the 2020s, there was this thing, I didn't know what happened, but they were called forced swim tests, and PETA targeted this super hard. And this is, like, pharmaceutical companies would put small animals in, like, small containers of water and make them swim for their lives trying to escape. And this was like a way to like test the effects of medication on people with depression. And PETA was like, this literally does nothing for people with depression. This is so fucked up. You need to stop doing this. And they actually succeeded in getting over 30 different places to stop using these forced swim tests of small animals.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they're making all of this progress. Like in 2020, they also had more control over SeaWorld, obviously. This was wild, actually. They got SeaWorld to agree to stop making trainers stand on dolphins' faces and ride their backs as part of their show. And this happened after this months-long PETA campaign that included a veterinary report, a shareholder question posed by Alec Baldwin, which I'm just like, what? Mm-hmm. A resolution with shareholders, numerous local ads, and emails from more than 133,000 PETA members and supporters. Mm-hmm. Yeah. They also were still going after wool. This is like a really current thing, people talking about wool. And I think a lot of people don't realize that the wool industry can be so cruel to animals. Like, even online, people are like, I don't understand why vegans don't like wool. Like, the sheep have to be shorn. And PETA has done a pretty good job of showing, like, video and photo evidence. Like, this is really damaging to these animals. They've also been caught using props, though, in ads. Like, showing, like, a fake sheep with, like, an example of the type of damage done. And that has also kind of discredited them. Because people are like, I can't tell what's supposed to be real and fake here. But they did, like, one of this huge undercover investigations into alpaca wool producers. And that was, like, really, really harrowing. They also got Sephora to ban fur eyelashes.
I'm sorry, what now?
Yeah, I guess there were fur eyelashes. I like makeup. I don't do fake eyelashes though, so I didn't know that there were like mink eyelashes being used. And they got Sephora's massive. It's 28,000 stores they got to. No,
I mean I get like the thing that I keep thinking is like with like a lot of the cruelty and testing stuff, and then also mink eyelashes.
Yeah,
is like, what kind of sadistic person comes up with this in the first place? Right? Because it's like weird. the thing with the like will make small animals swim for their lives to test, like that just
so weird.
What does that do for depressed people?
Yeah, I don't understand it all. It's very, very weird. But it's like they were saying, it's like, well, this just gives you funding.
Yeah.
You're like, look, we're doing proof of concept, give us money. But while they're doing all this and like also passing like Virginia laws about like tethering dogs in bad weather conditions, they also are out in the world saying COVID-19 wouldn't exist in a vegan world.
Oh, no, and I actually met someone during COVID who was like a big PETA activist person, it went from like vaccines are bad to what was the bat or whatever?
Yeah, there's some like a bat
pangolin or whatever to like coded like racism about like, you know,
Asian people.
Yep. And it was just like, oh boy.
And they really leaned into it. They leaned into it so hard. So it's like, again, they like are doing work that if people just knew about their work would actually make them credible, but like their media presence is so cartoonishly bad and dislikable that I didn't realize PETA was this successful at getting all these things legislated.
No, I mean, I think it's right, like you wonder what the utility of the like
I think it's funding. I think it's that they're super sensationalized and they get a lot of funding. And like in 2021, they're still doing all of their normal campaigning. For example, they're doing stuff with like Alan Cumming and like they're doing this to like rescue chimpanzees. But at the same time, they like made CVS, Rite Aid, and a place called Boots ban the sale of greeting cards that had unnatural images of chimpanzees and orangutans because they said clownish images would lead consumers to believe that these animals were not endangered and would want them as pets. And it's like, what?
What?
Is this really a win for you guys? Because you're doing all... Like, that same year, though, they got, like, 12 other initiatives to, like, target the Department of Justice and, like, rescue animals from military animal testing and go after these, like, factory farmers that are, like, torturing animals. And then they're also, like, by the way, greeting card companies, it should be illegal for you to draw chimpanzees too cute because then people might want one.
Only aggro and anatomically correct chimpanzees.
Yeah, make people terrified of the chimpanzees. The following year, after 2 decades of campaigning, they got KFC to launch the Beyond Fried Chicken at all locations nationwide. And this suddenly made so much sense to me because being vegan, I'll hear that like fast food places will come out with a vegan product, but it'll only be like out on the menu for a month and then it'll disappear and I don't even get to try it. And I'm like, oh my God, I think they're all literally doing it just to appease PETA and get PETA off their back.
And then they're like, look, this is not worth it.
We're not actually doing it. They also, in 2022, got the governor of Virginia to sign beagle bills into law. Remember how I said that?
Yeah, the beagle.
It's really sad. People use beagles a lot for animal testing because they're so trusting and sweet. So they actually got protections passed in Virginia to protect animals bred and sold for experiments. And it's really, they had a lot of really, really bad footage they found of these dogs and puppies getting abused. It's really, really sad. But yeah, they're like doing all of these really amazing things. They like, I don't know, they're just, even into 2023, they're still like rescuing animals, putting them in animal sanctuaries, still going after some of the Tiger King guys. They're doing all of this great stuff, but at the same time, Ingrid Newkirk, who's still at like 74, I think, like at the head of PETA at this time, is making headlines by saying that when she dies, she willed different parts of her body to go to different people, and she wanted part of her to be made into nuggets and sent to like the heads of all these companies who still use animals. It was like, she's got a weird fucking sense of humor, and she's like, oh, I want like my feet to be made into like leather boots, and I want them to be sent to this company that makes leather boots. And it's just like, she is trolling so hard, and it does make her seem so unserious.
I mean, it's also, I have to imagine that she has not talked to someone, you know, like me, right?
Yeah.
Like, for like decades, right? So like, she, like, you know, she's not hearing someone go like, oh, that's bizarre, man. And like,
yeah,
like you actually do need to, like, I am here to be convinced, I guess, but right, like,
yeah, this is like they're like their own worst enemies. And I think because of how bizarre they are, there's a lot of criticism against PETA, but there's like a lot of the criticism is like myth-based. Like, did you ever hear, for example, that PETA thinks nobody should be allowed to have pets?
Yeah, I did hear that. And actually, like, at some point we're going to talk about their specifically not no-kill shelter.
Yeah, that's coming up. But like the pets thing first, I definitely heard that PETA thought all pets should immediately be released into the world, like into the wild, to survive for themselves. And I was like, that is so ridiculous. Like, my dachshund cannot survive in the wild. Like, what? She didn't even exist in the wild. We created dachshunds. But it turns out that this one was, like, mostly misinformation. Like, PETA they do silly things. They call them animal companions. But they say, we at PETA very much love the animal companions who share our homes, but we believe that it would have been in the animal's best interest if the institution of pet keeping, i.e. breeding animals to be kept and regarded as pets, never existed. Please be assured that PETA does not oppose kind people who share their lives and homes with animal companions whom they love, treat well, and care for properly. So I'm like, oh, that actually sounds kind of normal and not as extreme as I thought it was.
And they do, like, they are adamant and aggressive about spaying and neutering pets, or like sterilizing or whatever you want to call it, because they're like, look, we need, like, this is a practice.
Yeah, they also oppose breeding.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. They're like, yeah, we oppose puppy mills and private breeders, and we're opposed to all breeding. And they say in U.S. animal shelters alone, up to 4 million dogs, cats, puppies, and kittens are euthanized each year simply because there aren't enough homes for them. Given the astounding number of healthy and loving but unwanted animals who are being killed, we believe that breeding more animals merely to satisfy the desire for a particular behavioral or physical trait is absurd and selfish. And that sounds pretty sane and rational, but that's also ominous foreboding for some of their very real criticisms that we'll get into coming up. They have some other wacky shit about pets too, like they say like crating is evil. But, like, I've had dogs with separation anxiety and they prefer to be crated. It, like, gives them a sense of peace and security. Like, Modog would literally hurt herself when she was left at home without a crate. And once we started crating, she got a lot better. So, you know, whatever.
I mean, I think, right, like, this seems, like, ideologically consistent to me in the sense that they're sort of like, well, you are, like, interfering with this animal's, like, freedom and, like, whatever.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where it's like, look, the reality here is that the animal doesn't have a lot of agency.
Right.
Right, like...
But also I'm like, yeah, my dachshund shouldn't have a lot of agency in the world. She doesn't understand how the world works. She needs me to help her. You know?
No, I mean, I guess it's just like, just because of the virtue of Fork, is tiny, low to the ground, and...
Doesn't know what a car is.
Doesn't know what a car is. Doesn't so much walk as wobbles around. Right, like the ability to accomplish what Fork would like to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
I think she thinks that she is a much larger and much more capable animal than she is.
I think so too. I would agree with that as well. So the thing that all this, though, is like ominous foreboding about is this thing that I know a lot of people might have heard about, which is that PETA euthanizes like a lot of animals. Like a lot of animals.
Yeah, so as of 2011 from an Atlantic article, out of 760 dogs impounded, they killed 713, arranged for 19 to be adopted, farmed out 36 to other shelters. As for cats, they impounded 1,200 and euthanized of those 1,198. They also took in 58 other companion animals, including rabbits, killing 54 of them. So the thing is, and you see this sort of consistently, that it's like either the statistic is almost all of the animals, like over 90% or around 90% PETA euthanizes.
Yeah, so the interesting thing about this is that PETA like isn't running animal shelters, but people don't realize that. So in 2010, a Virginia resident called PETA and asked if it operated an animal shelter, and PETA said no. So she's like, what? So then she contacted the Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, which is the government agency responsible for overseeing shelters and animal welfare matters in the state, and was like, I'm really confused. Why is PETA saying they don't run a shelter? So Dr. Daniel Kovic, who was an investigator, conducted an inspection of PETA's animal shelter at the Virginia headquarters in July of 2010, and Kovic determined, quote, the facility does not contain sufficient animal enclosures to routinely house the number of animals annually reported as taken into custody. So everyone was confused because you're like, PETA's bringing animals here, but there's nowhere for them to keep them, and they're telling people they don't run a shelter. And what they found is like, they did take in a lot of animals, thousands of animals. But yeah, the adoption rate for finding homes for these animals in 2011, it was 2.5% for dogs and 0.4% for cats. That meant that the kill rate was like 94% for dogs, 99% for cats, and 93% for the other random animals they took in, like rabbits and stuff. And at one of its quote-unquote shelters, it killed 84% of animals within 24 hours of their arrival. So what everybody was finding out is they're like, this isn't a shelter. You literally are taking animals to euthanize them. These are euthanization sites. But they weren't telling people that. And they still don't tell people that. They say that they're going to take these animals and rehome them. And then they instantly kill them. And this is so wild. And to me, this has like a lot to do with like Ingrid Newkirk's initial experience in the shelters, where she's like, the most humane thing you can do is just kill them easily and quickly to minimize their suffering. That's like a kind assessment of maybe what's going on.
Yeah,
but
no,
people think it might be more nefarious than that.
No, this is what got her called the Butcher of Norfolk by like this guy Winograd, because he was like totting all this up, and he was like, the thing is, PETA will say, look, you haven't seen the condition these animals come to us in. This is the kindest thing for them. And then he has researched and been like, that's the case a lot of the time, but they're overstating it.
Yes.
Right.
So, like, by contrast, Virginia, the state that this was in, the animal shelters as a whole only had a kill rate of like 44%. And that's still pretty high to me.
Yeah.
But it's not 99%. And yeah, Nathan Winograd is a Stanford law graduate and former corporate lawyer. And he wrote a book called Irreconcilable Differences, The Battle for the Heart and Soul of America's Animal Shelters. And he, yes, argued that PETA's failure to find homes for impounded companion animals is the result of founder Ingrid Newkirk's, quote, dark impulses.
Yeah.
So he literally, but this part's weird, he performed a virtual psychological vivisection of her, which is just like...
no, this was the same Atlantic article, right?
Yes,
yeah,
where
it's crazy.
He called her a disturbed person, a shameless animal killer, and an executrix of bloody reign of terror over dogs and cats. And he was like, yeah, you're like a nurse who gets a thrill from killing your patients. Which, like, you can't psychoanalyze somebody without them being your patient. Like, that's like weird.
I will say that Winograd is really good at coming up with the names for metal songs.
Oh yeah, this is so metal. No, it's true. And Winograd did once ask Peta, like, what sort of effort do you routinely make to find adoptive homes for animals in your care? And Peta was like, no comment. And Peta does say, that the majority are unadoptable, but he is like, this is a lie. Rescue groups and individuals have come forward stating the animals they gave Peta were healthy and adoptable. I know it's a lie. People testify under oath in court that veterinarians have showed that Peta was given healthy and adoptable animals who were later found dead by Peta's hands. Their bodies unceremoniously thrown away in a supermarket dumpster. It's a lie because according to the Daily Caller, 2 Peta employees described as adorable and perfect some of the dogs and cats they then killed in the back of a Peta-owned van.
Yeah.
So, and this is the exact thing that Peta has ostensibly been fighting against around the planet for years, which is so hard to wrap your head around. Like, from 2002 to 2013, Peta killed nearly 30,000 animals, even as it was saving thousands and millions of animals from bad conditions. But, like, if Peta weren't Peta, Peta would save animals from Peta.
Okay, gotcha.
Right?
Yeah.
And by 2022, these figures had improved slightly, but still the overall kill rate for animals PETA took in that year was 74%, which is huge. Like, for reference, most shelters try to rehome 90% of the pets they receive now. And the conditions that people have found the dead pets in are shocking. Like, in 2005, investigators, found a literal supermarket dumpster full of the bodies of animals PETA had killed that they just dumped in there. And a veterinarian said that he naively gave PETA some of those animals thinking they would find them homes. And he found them later in this dumpster. He helped examine them when the police found them. And he also examined the dead bodies of other animals and said that all of them were healthy and adoptable. There's a story of a mother cat and her 2 kittens who were all perfectly healthy and adoptable and not in danger of being killed until they were given to PETA by a veterinarian. And they reportedly killed them within minutes in the back of a van after picking them up. And people call these PETA death vans because they're all equipped with mobile euthanasia kits. And the second these animals enter PETA's care, the first priority is killing them. So despite $35 million in animal revenue and millions of, quote, animal-loving members, PETA does not even try to find these animals home. They have no adoption hours. They don't do adoption promotions or drives. They have no adoption floor, but they are still registered with the state of Virginia as a humane society and animal shelter.
So we should mention, or you sent me that article, which this little cute buddy, Maya.
Oh, yes, Maya.
They are going out looking for these things. That was the part that, like...
Yes.
Where it was like...
They are seeking animals to euthanize. And it is true that... Okay, so when people talk about this, they're like, well, this is part of like a astroturfing campaign against PETA designed to make them look bad. And it is true. A lot of the press about PETA euthanizing animals comes from one place, which is a group called the Center for Consumer Freedom, or CCF, which is a lobbying group funded by Philip Morris that's designed to look out for the interests of companies in the meat industry, like KFC or Outback Steakhouse or cattle ranchers. And obviously, this type of lobbying group would have an interest in discrediting PETA, and they're the ones who set up like the website, like PETAkillsanimals.com.
Yeah, so I went to that website, and it seems like it doesn't go anywhere anymore.
Yeah, but the thing is that PETA, on their end, they don't deny euthanizing the animals. They do say, like you mentioned, David, that they receive animals nobody else would take in due to extreme health concerns, and they even have like a website to try to be transparent and post like photos of those animals, and it is pretty jarring.
But I feel like it's also, it's one of those things, this kind of ties back to PETA's sort of media strategy, which is to just shock and freak people out.
Yes.
Which is, like, I was like, okay, this is sort of very clearly, like, the most shocking examples. And then we have all of these other sort of things where it's like, we gave you healthy kittens.
Right. And it's like, okay, so you killed 30,000 animals. Here's pictures of 30. They look really bad. They do look really bad.
They look really gnarly. I don't know what I would do in that situation. I don't think that's great.
Right. But there is some sort of like weird battle going on between CCF and PETA, and it feels like both of them are bad. And because there is also evidence that PETA has gone way overboard on euthanizing pets. Like, in at least 2 cases, PETA workers were arrested in incidents where they took pets from people's homes.
Yeah.
Right? Didn't surrender them to a shelter and killed them. Like, one family took out a full-page ad in a newspaper, and they talked about what happened to them. And they said on October 18th, 2014, in Parksley, Virginia, PETA stole Maya, a happy and healthy dog, from her porch while her family was out. They killed her that very day. According to a spokesperson for Maya's family, PETA came to the trailer park where the family lives, where most of the residents are Spanish-speaking with few resources. The PETA representatives befriended the residents. They got to know who lived there and who had dogs. They sat with the family on the porch, which they later took Maya from. Waiting until the family was away from home, PETA employees then backed their van up to the porch, threw biscuits to Maya in an attempt to coax her off the property and therefore give PETA the ability to claim she was a stray dog at large. But Maya refused and stayed on the porch and ran back. Thinking no one was around, one of the employees, who was later charged with larceny, then went onto the property and took Maya. When the family returned and found Maya was missing, they searched around the neighborhood before checking the video on surveillance camera, and that's when they saw the PETA van on film and recognized the woman who had come to their house on prior occasions to talk to them about Maya. They called PETA and asked for Maya's return. According to a family spokesperson, PETA claimed it didn't have the dog, and when PETA was told that its employees had been filmed taking the dog, they hung up. Shortly afterwards, a PETA attorney called and informed the family that Maya was dead. PETA had killed her. She may not be the only one. On the day they stole Maya, other animals went missing as well. Had a surveillance video not been available, the killing of Maya would have remained unknown, as are the fates of the other animals. In the last 11 years, PETA has killed 29,426 animals.
This is
horrible.
Literally the plot of 101 Dalmatians without the coats.
Yes!
Right, like, we are going to dog nap your dog and kill them.
Yes!
It's
horrible. And it was like a 9-year-old girl's pet chihuahua.
Yeah, which was a Christmas present she had been given 9 days earlier. Like, the whole thing is just like...
horrible. And this was corroborated by local news sources. And the 2 PETA employees involved were arrested but not prosecuted due to a lack of evidence that they possessed criminal intent. Also, in 2007, a PETA worker in Virginia was arrested and charged with a felony count of theft after she was found in possession of a sheriff's hunting dog. The charge was eventually reduced to a misdemeanor and then dismissed. But basically, she saw a dog on the side of the road, and it had a collar on, and she took the collar off, left the collar, and then took the dog, and it turned out to be the sheriff's dog. They were out hunting, so it's like, well, you fucked that one up. But yeah, so the CCF is like, PETA is killing a bunch of dogs, saying these are healthy, adorable, perfect dogs by PETA's own standards. Local news sources appear to be corroborating this, and it's just like, I don't think PETA or the CCF is that trustworthy, but I think that family who had video footage of PETA stealing their dog does sound trustworthy.
Here's the thing. Okay, let's imagine you're like Philip Morris or whatever, and you're this group that is running the CCF. You might not be great, but like at this point you can just be like, you can do what PETA does. Here's the evidence.
Here's the info,
right?
Yeah.
And so they're not great people. I don't think we need to trust them or give them plaudits or some sort of praise for publicizing this. They obviously have a motive.
Yeah, they definitely have a motive.
It's also just true that PETA is doing this.
It is true. Ingrid Newkirk told Nathan Winograd, right, who's the leader of the no-kill movement to not euthanize pets, quote, "We do not advocate right to life for animals," and said explicitly that PETA opposes the no-kill movement in general. So she is very vocally like, no, we euthanize animals and we think that is a good thing. And yeah, CCF might be sensationalizing it for like business gain, right? Because like CCF is run by Rick Berman, who has attacked everyone from, you know, the CDC for criticizing smoking, Mothers Against Driving for criticizing alcohol, and yeah, PETA for criticizing meat consumption. And this guy comes from a background in the food and beverage industry. Like, he started out in 1975 under the mentorship of this guy named Norman Brinker, who was the founder and owner of the Steak and Ale chain of restaurants. So this guy is like PETA's #1 enemy. He has this foundation that is funded by poultry companies like Purdue Farms and Tyson, or Raising Cane's, or Outback Steakhouse, P.F. Chang's, Monsanto even, Applebee's, Michigan turkey producers, Syracuse's Italian sausage company. So, you know, this is big meat we're talking about here, funding this guy. Definitely. And the CCF website, it's pretty transparent what they're up to. It's like a ton of articles about how awful vegan fake meat is, you know? Like, they're just like, no, like, we're here for the meat guys.
I will say, Chris made me eat one of those Impossible burgers at some point.
Yeah.
They're good.
They're pretty good.
They're good.
They're pretty good. Yeah. And this guy, Rick Berman, once said, I get up every morning and I try to figure out how to screw with the labor unions. That's my offense. I'm just trying to figure out how I'm going to reduce their brand. Yeah, not a great guy. And Rachel Maddow, she is what she is, but she described him in really funny terms, actually. She said, if there were a corporation that benefited from people pounding nails into their foreheads, Rick Berman would be the PR guy that the corporation hired to promote the healthiness of pounding nails into your forehead.
I mean, he's like every stereotype of an ad guy.
Yes.
Ever. Which is...
Yeah, so, this is why you will hear people be like, well, that's an AstroTurf campaign against PETA, it's cooked up by their enemies, and it's like, well, it's not cooked up by their enemies because Winograd, the no-kill shelter guy, should not be an enemy of an animal rights group, and yet he is one of the people who is really, really concerned. So it's publicized by PETA's enemies for sure. This is very clearly a business situation, but they're not the only ones with concerns about PETA. Other animal rights groups have concerns about PETA. And then there are other criticisms that we know are definitely true. Like, for example, they support breed-specific legislation. You know what that means?
No.
That means making pit bulls illegal.
Oh.
I know, it's really sad. Newkirk and PETA have been among the most outspoken supporters for breed-specific legislation, which is laws that criminalize living with certain dogs, especially bully breed dogs like pit bulls. And they have tried to stop animal rights groups who try to save and find homes for bully breed dogs. Which makes me so sad because that's dogs like Georgie. That's my boyfriend's dog.
So cute.
I know. I hate this shit so much. PETA wrote a letter to the mayor of Williamson County that said PETA recommends a ban on the adoption and release of dangerous dogs and fighting breeds, commonly known as pit bulls, which is just this has been disproven so many times. These dogs are not more violent than anything. And I really hate the story, but I'm going to tell it. But it's really fucking sad. So if you're sensitive to dog violence and you're listening, just skip ahead 30 seconds. But a former employee at PETA described an instance where a perfectly healthy and friendly pit bull dog was killed because of its breed alone. They said, the pit bull was wagging its tail, jumping, an obviously friendly dog, not feral, while receiving praise, treats, and getting pet by the employees. It was the end of my shift, so I was cleaning and restocking, which required me to go to the shed for supplies. I saw 2 employees take the pit bull into the shed's euthanasia room, which was inside. It is a small room where they have a table and a huge walk-in freezer with 4 large trash cans. The trash cans contained deceased animals and were usually full. As I continued to do my job, I heard the employees talking to the dog and trying to calm it down as it whined. Later, they opened the door and I saw the pit bull deceased on the table. And this makes me want to cry because this is the description is so Georgie. It's her energy. She's just so trusting and sweet and loves everyone. And just knowing someone could do that to a dog that's so trusting and kind, it's makes me want to throw up thinking about it. It's horrible. They also are really hypocritical with celebrities. Pamela Anderson's one of their favorite celebrities. She auctioned off a Dodge Viper to support an anti-slaughter campaign. The car had a leather interior though.
Yeah,
It's just what? Jenna Jameson did an anti-leather campaign for PETA. A few days later, she was spotted wearing a leather jacket around. Dita Von Teese has worked with PETA, but she wears fur all the time and talks about loving foie gras. Remember how PETA tried to get foie gras illegal? Kimora Lee Simmons is a PETA spokesperson, but wears fur all the time. They also run these really weird fat-shaming campaigns, talking about how everyone should just go vegan to be skinny.
Yeah, I mean, how much of this do you think is mercenary on their part, where they're just people are fat phobic, so we'll do fat phobia?
I mean, I think that's the thing. I think they have no moral standing except for saving animals, but then when you look at the euthanasia shit or the story about murdering the pit bull, I'm just what do you actually think you're doing here? I don't fucking understand. It's so jarring, and I think that's why it's so shocking to people, because it's so against everything they claim to do. And again, when I went into this, I was oh, well, I think that stuff is fake, because I think that's an astroturfing fake campaign by their political enemies, because that's what I've heard online. But then when you look into it more and you're well, that is an element of it, but it's actually real. Winograd, he's not making this up. The family whose dog was stolen has video footage of PETA doing it. You can see the video footage online. They released it. It's this is not made up. They are actually doing this. The state of Virginia is concerned. And meanwhile, at the same time, they also are they had this one ad that came out that said that dairy caused autism. Did you see this? Oh, this one's so weird. Boy. It's a Got Milk ad, but it says, has your child got autism? Learn about the link between autism and dairy products at PETA.org. And you're just
I actually do think I saw that ad, and I remember being deeply confused and was just sort of like, this doesn't seem like something I need to look into.
No, it's just so weird. And like, one of the biggest concerns, besides the killing 99% of the animals, right, is like this whole white veganism thing, which we kind of talked about. And like, you know about white veganism, right?
Say more.
Okay, so white veganism is just the idea that you're vegan, but you're vegan in a way that upholds like white supremacy and denies like the reality of colonization and like the subjugation of people of color, and also like the ways in which like indigenous and native practices involve meat and like aren't necessarily bad for the planet the way like factory farming and like Western white culture is.
Yeah, I mean, this is like, to go back, like we talked about this with Peter Singer, but this has been kind of the through line, which is just like, let's flatten out all distinctions from a place of relative power and privilege. Right. And that's like the thing where it's sort of like, you do realize that there are, like, factory farming is not, like, indigenous hunting practices, is not, right, like, I'm just going to say the other kinds of necessity diets that people eat when they are in food deserts or all sorts of colonized, like... Right. It's just, like, it's always more complex than the kind of, like, individual responsibility kind of shit that PETA seems to push for. Yeah, and I think that's like, if I had anything about my ideology that's like a leading core value, is that like things are usually not issues of individual accountability. Yeah. Like most things are systemic. And veganism, animal rights, you know, that's not exempt. Like so Isaias Hernandez, who's an environmental educator and activist and founder of Queer Brown Vegan, says, you know, white veganism is a form of veganism that focuses solely on animal liberation while actively ignoring the effects of colonization and how it's interconnected to the oppression of humans and animals. And Demi Colleen, who's another vegan influencer activist and also a veterinary nurse in the UK, says it's an extension of white supremacy, or at least a tool of it. White vegans prioritize the top layer of veganism, animal exploitation, but they ignore the socioeconomic impact that comes from the movement being more popularized. Yvette Baker, who's like a writer, educator, social critic, animal liberation activist, and abolitionist, says it's rooted in white supremacy and refers to a culture that disregards marginalized voices from the mainstream vegan discourse while centering white voices and creating white saviors. Baker also says the Vegan Society is a prime example of this. Those people that came up with like the definition and have been around since like maybe the 50s. But Baker says it's white-dominated leadership has allowed racism, misogyny, anti-Semitism, transphobia, weightism, and ableism to thrive within the animal liberation movement so long as it's been for the animals. As Demi Colleen states, veganism can only be about the liberation of animals when it also stops the oppression of people. And also, I mean, I always hate being this guy, but when you were describing, like, some of the good they did, where they were like, they convinced, you know, H&M to do this thing, and I was sort of like, this is probably around the time that some of those, like sweatshop stuff was happening a lot at the time, where you're just like, okay, I don't mean to be the guy who, you know, but also's every damn thing. But it does, like, I am more concerned, or at least I am more concerned about the nature of labor. Yeah. And just being like, we gotta win. We got a giant multinational corporation to, like, AstroTurf something so that they can get some good press and get us off our back. Right.
It's too convenient.
While not actually paying attention to the underlying structural things that are happening at that corporation, or because that corporation exists.
Right. Yeah, so, like, white veganism does involve, like, a lot of stuff about labor practice. It like, what it looks like in practice, though, there's, like, promoting veganism, right, is the only way to support animal liberation without considering social, economic, or cultural barriers. Like you said, like, if you live in a food desert, like, it's easy for me to be vegan because I live in Los Angeles, right? But, like, a lot of white veganism will overlook inequitable access to certain foods or plant-based foods in certain marginalized communities. Like, I think that my grandma lives in Montana. I don't know if she could find a lentil within an hour drive of her house. You know what I mean? Like, I live off lentils. It's easy for me to eat cheap, like, rice and lentils, but, like, I don't think you could just go get cheap bulk lentils most places, like rural community areas. It also would be like having a strict definition of veganism that wouldn't allow for culturally different relationships with animals. Like, for example, like you said, the practice of hunting by indigenous or traditional communities, or traditional diets that happen to contain animal products. Like, PETA once gave $5,000 in legal defense money to Josh Harper, who attacked Native Americans on a whale hunt by throwing smoke bombs, shooting flares, and spraying their faces with chemical fire extinguishers.
Yeah. Not great.
Not great. It also would look like comparing animal agriculture to historical injustices posted on marginalized communities. Like, saying animal agriculture is the same thing as slavery or the sexual assault of women, which, again, just ends up dehumanizing people, not humanizing animals. Mm-hmm. It also would be contributing to the growth of vegan capitalism. So this would be like trendy vegan products that take a toll on the land, on marginalized communities around the world, exploit labor, right, used by transnational agribusinesses to promote these vegan alternatives, and also refusing to acknowledge social justice as it pertains to food production. Mm-hmm. Also, it's interesting because Black Americans are the fastest growing population identifying as vegan, but Black vegans are super underrepresented in mainstream vegan movements and organizations. Like, when you look at the PETA Foundation leadership, like, you've got President Ingrid Newkirk, you've got Executive VP Tracy Ryman, you have Senior VP Kathy Guillermo, you have Senior VP of Communications Lisa Lang, you have Senior VP of Media Relations Colleen O'Brien, you've got the Senior Vice President of Cruelty Investigations Daphna Nakminovich, Chief Legal Officer Jeff Kerr. All of these people are white. Mm-hmm. Every single one of them. Meanwhile, veganism has been and continues to be remarkably Black, brown, and not white, even as these, like, organizations aren't reflecting that. So still, you've got the white vegan groups like PETA that continue to use words like slavery or concepts like the civil rights movement to describe animal agriculture, even while Black vegans are like, could you not fucking do this? Like, PETA still has a section on their website called Meat Equals Slavery. They have posted as recently as 2019 talking about how Abraham Lincoln saved elephants from slavery.
No.
They've been called out by civil rights groups in the past for continuing to compare Black experiences to animal agriculture. And Raphael Miller says, through these narratives, the lives and struggles of Black people become equal to that of animals. The imagery is not only triggering for Black people, but dangerous. These comparisons desensitize the use and perception behind the historical connotations regarding slavery and civil rights. Plights exclusive to Black people, meaning that white people and non-Black people of color have no place to provide new context to these terms. When Black people are still fighting to be viewed as equal, as human even, in a society that uses similar comparisons to non-human animals to justify their systematic and systemic murder, jailing, and mistreatment, such comparisons are overtly harmful. Additionally worth noting, PETA is silent about the struggles of Black Americans today. Like, they equate Black pain to animal suffering when convenient for animal rights, but they would never do the reverse and equate animal suffering to Black pain. Like, they, so you know they don't actually view humans as animals.
It is not the case that Black pain is absent from public consciousness.
Right, they've had many opportunities. So they're out there and they're like, this cow being killed is just like Black people being killed. Oh, and then Black people are killed and they're like silent. You know, and you're like, what? I thought this was so bad because they were so similar. Like, but it only goes one way when convenient. They're not actually caring about humans as animals.
Right. Like, I feel like the best you could say for them is they are a single issue advocacy group, which is extraordinarily legislatively effective. Their rhetoric is bananas.
Yes. And I would never let them within 10 feet of my dog.
I would never let them within 10 feet of me.
Yeah.
I feel like we would mutually annoy the shit out of each other.
Yeah.
Any PETA person and me, because it would just be like, there's like no ideology to the way I eat food other than like, I would want to be like nice to other people.
Yeah. I mean, I interact with them a lot and it is wild. It's a wild experience. Mm-hmm. So that person, Isaiah Hernandez, talks about veganism and like the kind of thing about how like a lot of not white people are vegan, and this idea that like veganism is centered on this like white experience like PETA puts forward is just such a fallacy. Like, so Isaias Hernandez says, I think veganism first looks to honor indigenous ancestral knowledge and wisdom, to center culture-based experiences and to reconnect with these roots. This has helped me understand what veganism means rather than just centering a cleaner or more ethical diet. And when we look, we see 8% of Black Americans are vegan or vegetarian in America, compared to just 3% of the general population, which is pretty wild.
That's pretty wild.
One poll found that 31% of not white Americans had reduced their meat consumption in the past year, compared to only 19% of white Americans. So when we look at this, there's like this huge disconnect, because you're like, being a vegetarian, being vegan is not just like a white person thing, yet these groups like PETA are positioning it from this absolutely wild perspective, right, of centering like whiteness and colonial power, like, you know, centering the widespread like agricultural practices that like harm indigenous communities, or, you know, being silent about issues that affect all people, like giving money to people who attack indigenous whalers, you know. PETA's website's still rife with articles about never buying coconut milk made in Thailand because they're like, well, all the Thai people hurt monkeys. Like, they have all this, like, weird racist rhetoric, and it replicates what Raphael Miller described as the willful dismissal of the fact that the pre-colonial existence of domesticated animals raised for pure consumption was rare within indigenous communities. The willful misconstruing nature of settler colonialism has continuously perpetuated a savage or barbaric indigenous rhetoric. In reality, non-human animals exist as equitable partners to humans with a vast, complex, interconnected network within indigenous frameworks, a sentiment that heavily resonates with the core of veganism. And, like, this is so true. I think that this, like, sums it up so well. It's like we, like, can't fathom a world where we're not relating to animals as a tool or an equal, but, like, as a separate third thing that's like fine and deserves to exist separately and tangentially to us, like in ways.
Yeah.
And I think like that's the core fallacy of like the PETA approach to veganism, or the Peter Singer approach to veganism, right?
Yeah.
It's like, what, they don't have to be tools that we just use and discard or are absolute equals. They can be a third separate thing that are like revered and respected.
But I think that that makes sense when you don't have like a sort of complex like ethical vocabulary. Like, this is the thing I was saying, where it's like, if you flatten everything to good, bad, and you don't talk about the other shit, you end up being like, good like us, or we treat good like us, bad
like
something
other. Yeah.
These are our only two switches.
Right. Yeah. And one of the main things too that we talked about a little bit is like how like veganism doesn't take into account like agricultural work, like agricultural labor. Like, a lot of critics will say when you center white veganism instead of indigenous practices, it has the effect of transferring animal agriculture into industrialized, increased plant agriculture, which is also damaging for the planet indigenous people. Like, when you look at the sudden mass production of things like avocados and chickpeas, that's like really bad for local communities. And Isaias Hernandez says animal activists often don't make those connections or look back into the history of why these industries exist and why they have so much power. Like, it all stems from white supremacy. And it's interesting because when we talked about Peter Singer, he like was critiquing capitalism, but was also like, it's the best system we've got. It's like, it's literally responsible for everything.
No, this guy
hate.
was, I don't think he was not critiquing capitalism. He said, I'm a capitalist. He was an effective altruist, one of the founders. Right? Like,
but he was part of, like, the New Labor movement. And
but
he was
the
like,
New
it's
Labor,
too centrist. And then he was like...
I don't know. I mean, the New Labor movement.
He's like, hey, I'd love to be anti-capitalist. I just don't know what system's better. It's like this weird nod.
I think that's disingenuous.
Of him?
Yeah, no, of him. Where he's like, oh, anyone who says, what's the dumbass line that you always get quoted when you tell someone you're not, like, you're a communist or a socialist? The, like, capitalism is the worst system except for all the others.
Oh,
or whatever
bullshit. That's him. That's what he's saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, we do know it's true that eating vegan has a significant positive impact overall on the planet. Like, one study found that vegans have just 30% of the dietary environmental impact of high meat eaters, and that even the least sustainable vegan diet was still more environmentally friendly than the most sustainable meat eaters diet. But this doesn't take into account the human cost of food production in general, right? And that tends to fall on people of color. Like in the United States, 63% of agricultural workers were born in Mexico, and 78% identify as Hispanic, and only 33% identified their race as white. So that means even in the United States, where nearly 76% of the country is white, only a third of agricultural workers are. Mm-hmm. And none of that touches on the international element, right, of food production. Like, meanwhile, farm workers are getting exposed to massive amounts of pesticides, which increase their risk of things like cancer and neurological disorders and infertility. Like, people working in agriculture have some of the highest rates of brain cancer, Parkinson's disease. They have 46% greater chances of having dementia. They've increased rates of anxiety, depression, and suicide. And on top of that, when you do things like compare animal agriculture to things like sexual assault, it's a slap in the face to agricultural workers, many of whom encounter this, like, unchecked epidemic of sexual harassment and assault while on the job, especially.
You're talking in the United States because of immigration status and being vulnerable. Yes,
they're undocumented immigrants. They're super, super vulnerable, and they're all being sexually harassed by their bosses. And you're like, you have these vegans who are like, yes, like having a cow in captivity is the same thing as assaulting a woman. And you're like, okay, cool. So go vegan, but the woman picking the cashews for the cashew milk instead of the regular milk is actually being sexually assaulted as we speak.
And this is the thing where I said I hate being the but also guy, because it's an annoying position, but it is like, okay, look, we're all a part of the animal kingdom over here.
Right, if you want to equate it, like, what about the humans?
These people are being exploited, which the whole thing, everything I read about this, I was just like, the answer is sort of clearly anti-capitalism.
Right. It has to be.
Because it's always sort of like, well, the cruelty is the sort of industrial farming. The cruelty is like the large-scale capitalist production that doesn't involve worker control.
Right.
Which is... Yeah.
That's it. And like Juliana Yazbek summarized this whole issue by just saying, white vegans blatantly care very little about the working conditions of farmers from the global south or immigrant farmers working in the global north, a problematic term in and of itself. And yeah, that is like kind of, I don't know, when I think about PETA, I'm like, even with all the quote unquote good, right, that they do, they like can't help themselves by just having an atrocious marketing position, from pushing the buttons of everybody around them, from, being like the world's biggest troll. And it's such like a weird experience because it's like they don't care that they're trolling. They literally don't think they don't care about people. Yeah, they delight in trolling. I don't think they care about the well-being of anybody. And it is interesting because you're like, how did the people who went from being so upset that 12 or 13 cats were euthanized in a shelter, how did that person go from that to euthanizing 99% of the animals they come into contact with and stealing dogs to kill them?
Well, recall that Ingrid Newkirk started this by staying extra hours to be the one responsible to euthanize cats because she saw what was happening to them otherwise.
Yeah.
Right. And so it does feel like there's like, if you had to like come up with some sort of narrative continuity, it's sort of like, in the case of domestic animals, she seems to have almost vanishingly little sympathy or care.
Yeah.
Right? Like, pets. This is like a
companion animals?
No, I'm going with pets at this point. I'm sorry, they cannot kidnap a poor girl's Christmas present chihuahua and then insist that they are talking about companion animals.
No, it's true. You're right.
Right.
Yeah, it's very hypocritical.
Pets, they don't seem to give a shit about. They don't like bulldogs, right?
Pit bulls,
excuse me.
Right, yeah.
Right, like,
they'll stop the dogs from getting shot by the U.S. military, but then they'll kill those are just as many dogs as the U.S. military.
Are dogs that are being experimented on. But if that pet, if like a beagle or whatever, were just like walking down the street with their person hanging out, they would kidnap that beagle.
Yeah, it's true.
Right, like...
It's very, very weird.
So it feels like... I don't know, PETA just seems like their thing is they have appointed themselves the arbiters of what justice for animals looks like.
Yeah.
In a way that feels, I was like, well, no. Like, I like that, like, I don't like weird experiments happening on animals for no reason.
Right.
That's bad.
It's bad, and they've done a lot of good work stopping it.
Done a lot of good work stopping it.
Yeah. But I don't know. What's the final take on PETA?
I mean, I feel like we live in a world of trolls.
Yes.
This is like, and so it's like, oh, one more group of dumb, silly guys, silly folk, who just, I was like, it doesn't really, they're bad. Their legal department really kills it.
Yeah, very effective legislatively. Yes.
But, you know, Ingrid Newkirk seems like a kook.
Yes.
I
think maybe that's the final take on PETA. Kooks with some powerful lawyer friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, kooky lawyers.
Which is, you know, would that we were all that lucky.
Maybe one day. All right, that's it. That's our episode on PETA. Thanks so much for listening to another episode of Pick Me Up, I'm Scared. If you would like to join us on Patreon, you can find us there at patreon.com/pickmeupimscared. For $3 a month, you can access bonus content there. But if $3 a month is too much for you to spend right now, we totally get it, and we're just happy you're here. As always, you can find the sources for this week's episode just by scrolling down a bit in the description.